Ready? Yep. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the August 21st, 2024 Environmental Quality Commission meeting. This is an in-person and virtual meeting with the Environmental Quality Commission, members, city staff, and members of the public. So we'll start with roll call. And now I would like to introduce staff and EQC members who are present. In the room, we have myself, Chair Schmidt. We have Vice Chair McKenna, Commissioners Headley, LaRocca, Hill, Meyer, and Pellegrio Park. Commissioner Kissel is not able to join today. And staff present include Sustainability Manager Rachel Lunder and Management Analyst 2, Ori Paz. Ms. Lunder, would you please provide instruction to the commission and members of the public on how the meeting will proceed?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. I will share some instructions for public comment this evening. If you are in person, there are public comment cards that you may fill out. I have them right here, and you can grab one and hand it back to me when you're ready to make comment. For those who are attending virtually, you can hit the raise hand button on Zoom and we will unmute you. And if you're joining via a microphone, you can press *9, via a phone, you can press *9 and we'll be able to unmute you from there. And you can make your public comment for up to 3 minutes. And I'll return the meeting to you, Chair.
Great. So under public comment, the public may address the commission on any subject not listed on the agenda. So each speaker may address the commission once under public comment for a limit of 3 minutes. While you're not required to provide your name or city of residence, it is helpful. The commission cannot act on items not listed on the agenda, and therefore the commission cannot respond to any non-agenda item or any non-agenda issues brought up under public comment other than to provide general information. Sustainability Manager Lunder, please call for public comment.
Absolutely. Thank you. If anyone would like to make general public comment, I have comment cards right here and you can grab it and hand it back to me. If you are on Zoom, if you can hit the raise hand button, we can unmute you. Or if you're on phone, press *9. And I don't see any public comment in the room. Or is there any online?
Let's check.
We'll give it a second for folks online. Great. I'll return the meeting to you.
Fantastic. So we will start with item D, regular business, D1, approving the July 17, 2024 Environmental Quality Commission meeting minutes. Before we do that, any clarifying questions from the EQC before we take public comment? No. So Ms. Lunder, do we have any public comment on this?
I'll open public comment now. You want to make public comment? We have cards up here. You can press the raise hand button on Zoom, or you can press *9 if you're joining via a landline. We'll give it a second for folks to raise their hand on Zoom or press *9. We don't have any cards in the room, and it doesn't look like we have any online. I'll return the meeting to you.
Great. So we can open the minutes for any EQC discussion and or motion.
I move that we approve the minutes.
I second.
I have a quick question on that one. I was just double checking. I see, I was trying to remember what commissions I was in. And I see that there's a commission on community education, but that's not on the schedule. Can you just double check that one? I don't want to approve something to that.
Could you repeat the name of the subcommittee?
Yeah. Hold on, let me find it.
Community.
Is listed as.
Community education and engagement.
Right, community education and engagement ad hoc subcommittee, but I don't see it in the schedule for the year.
Oh, I see it
Where is it?
on page 8.
But if you look at the schedule, where we have each month.
I
Oh,
believe that one was removed at the last meeting, so that might be an admin error that this subcommittee description is still there. Yeah, so that,
So that committee doesn't exist.
correct.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, so we can correct that one.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so in the motion, it would be great to move to approve while
Okay.
removing that
Yeah.
community education.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Do we have a motion?
yes,
Okay,
I move to approve the minutes with the friendly amendment made by Commissioner Pellegrino to remove that one ad hoc subcommittee
Thank you.
from the list.
Can I still second?
Okay, great. I will repeat the motion to approve the minutes with the recommendation to remove the community education ad hoc subcommittee from the fiscal year 24-25 work plan. And we don't need to take a roll call vote, so we can just go all in favor.
Fine.
Okay. 6 in favor and 1 absent. Which means the item passes. Thank you. Turn the meeting to you.
Fantastic. So we'll move on to item D2, a presentation from San Francisco Bay Area Planning and Urban Research Association, SPUR. For this item, I think we have Sam Fishman, SPUR's Sustainability and Resilience Policy Manager. And I'm not sure if I see Sarah online, Sam. Is she going to be joining us?
Yes, I can confirm she's going to be joining us. She is en route to her to a spot with internet at the moment, and is said she'd be running 5 to 10 minutes late, so she should be here any second. And I can get started without her, so we don't waste anyone's time.
Great. So that's Sarah Atkinson will be joining as Sam said. She's SPUR's Hazard Resilient Senior Policy Manager. So Sam, why don't you take it away?
Great.
And we'll just get
Alright.
your slides in too.
Yeah, I'm just gonna pull up slides here. Can everyone see?
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, thanks for inviting us today. We really appreciate the opportunity to present on the work that SPUR does in the Bay Area. And I'm getting sorry, I'm just gonna start my video. I'm getting a request. There we go. So yeah, we really appreciate this opportunity, and our presentation today will both be about SPUR, the organization, and about our sustainability and resilience portfolio more specifically. It's going to be a bit of a broad overview of what we work on, and also how we could support municipalities and work with municipalities in areas such as building decarbonization, sea level rise, and earthquake resilience, which are our focus areas of our sustainability and resilience team. So feel free to, if you have questions as I go, I'm happy to answer them as we go, but we'll also have a lot of time, I think, to discuss the presentation afterwards. And I see Sarah there. Hi, Sarah. I'll also, maybe now that Sarah's here, maybe we can just introduce ourselves really quickly as well. So my name's Sam Fishman. I'm the Sustainability and Resilience Policy Manager at SPUR. I cover most of our building decarbonization work, and before joining SPUR, I worked in international development and worked to some degree in climate issues, but also on energy and social protection. And I grew up in the Bay Area in Oakland. Sarah, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi everyone. I apologize for being a few minutes late. My name is Sarah Atkinson. I'm the Hazard Resilience Senior Policy Manager at SPUR. I've been at SPUR for about 2 years, and my background is in environmental sciences and city planning, and I am also from the Bay Area. I'm from the East Bay. Thanks for having us.
Great. All right. So, yeah, as I mentioned, we're just going to go through a bit about SPUR's history and mission, and then into our sustainability and resilience policy priorities. So SPUR's been around for a really long time. SPUR was founded in 1910 after the 1906 earthquake, in large part to help the Bay Area rebuild its building stock and its housing stock. And it was founded as an urban planning and public policy organization, and has remained one of the kind of longest standing civic organizations in the Bay Area, doing both advocacy, research, and education around a range of public policy, and it's since expanded beyond just housing, which I'll go into in a minute. As I mentioned, yeah, we work through these kind of 3 channels: research, education, and advocacy. And we work to create a sustainable, equitable, and prosperous region in which all people can thrive. We really try to work through developing visions for our region and acting through technical and policy-driven and research-oriented change. I think many of you might be familiar with products that Spur has created in the past, including our reports, and maybe most well-known, our voter guides. We also do a lot of work around election season. So that might be one of the reasons that Sarah's a little late to this meeting. We are actively doing ballot analyses for San Francisco, Oakland, and San Jose, as well as state propositions and region-wide propositions. It's another area Spur works in. And as I mentioned, we're not just a housing organization. We work at the intersection of a lot of different areas, including transportation, planning, good governance, and of course, sustainability and resilience. And the goal, really, the part of Spur's vision is to develop the urban core in the Bay Area, build both transit-oriented urban landscape that Spur, since I think the 1970s, had a transit first policy. It was a very early advocate for transit in the Bay Area. And we really envision a region that makes that focuses on land use, that really tries to make the best use of its land by decreasing roads, building denser infill housing, and orienting the region around transit that allows for equitable access to opportunities and services. And we also envision a region that plans appropriately around climate hazards, that preserves open space and creates inclusive public spaces for people to participate in an equitable way. Here's just a look again at the areas we focus on. And you can also look at Spur has a kind of vision document that we developed a number of years ago called, I believe, what is it called again? Sarah's Visions 2070 or something, or
yeah, Vision, I think, yeah, Vision 2070. And then we also have our regional strategy.
Yeah, and our regional strategy. And there you can look at those to kind of get a flavor for what we imagine for the Bay Area region, what our policy and platforms kind of orient around as far as a vision. So yeah, Sarah and I are the sustainability and resilience team right now. Many of you may have known Laura Feinstein, who was our previous director, who left for San Francisco Estuary Institute. She was helped build this team over the last few years, and Sarah and I are carrying it onward. And our platform is that the region should be environmentally just, carbon neutral, and resilient to climate change and earthquakes. And that kind of leads into those planks, decarbonizing buildings. That's where I work most of my work is. We're working to eliminate the use of fossil fuels in buildings and to make the air healthier and reduce climate pollution. And a lot of our work around that has centered on the Bay Area Air Quality Management District's clean air rules, but we also work at the state, regional, and local level. So we work in a lot of different forums to achieve this goal. I guess I can pass it off to you, Sarah, to mention your planks.
Sure. Yeah, so plank 2, we have 3 planks. I sort of am on plank 2 and 3. So plank 2, making the region resilient to sea level rise and other climate-driven natural disasters or natural hazards. So right now, sea level rise and groundwater rise are our 2 main focus, and then kind of coastal flooding in general. But we also do some work around wildfire and heat, but we're focused on sea level rise at the moment. And then plank 3 is really where we get at earthquakes and earthquake resilience. And we wanted to forefront like improving community resilience to earthquakes, because there's a lot of focus on buildings, and that is a portion of what I do, but I really try to think about how can communities prepare, and partnering with community organizations around earthquake resilience.
Thanks. Yeah, we'll go now into a little bit more detail on some of the actions that we and strategies we've been implementing over the last few years and months. So I mentioned that in our efforts in building decarbonization, we're really focused on implementing the clean air rules in the Bay Area in both like an equitable, affordable, and smooth manner. And that is not something Spur does in a vacuum. There are a lot of advocates, a lot of people working on building decarbonization in the private, nonprofit, and public sectors. And we've developed in coalition, or we've developed a coalition with our partners called the Bay Area Clean Air Coalition that's worked on the clean air rules with the Bay Area Air Quality Management District in 2020 through 2023. And those rules, which are going to phase out the sale of gas water heaters in 2027 and HVAC systems in 2029, were passed in March of 2023. And now our goal now is to follow through on that commitment, because we are obviously, it's not going to be an easy thing to do to get all of the buildings in the Bay Area transitioned to a totally new technology. And we really want to make sure we get this right, that we can serve as a model for other parts of the state and the nation as a whole. One thing that we've done with our coalition is released essentially a plan of action around what we imagine cities, choice aggregators, regional actors, and state agencies can do to further the clean air goals. And that's summarized in our toolbox for transitioning to zero pollution equipment. I encourage folks to check it out. It's a very easy read. It's like about 3 pages or 4 pages, and it goes through kind of everything that we work on. And it's a good summary of what Spur is, what we're focusing on as well in the decarbonization space. I'm going to go into a couple examples of areas that we're particularly focused. One is this issue of panel and service upsizing. So when we talk about building decarbonization, we're mostly talking about heat pumps, EVs, induction stoves, and these are all electric equipment usually, and that means adding load to a home's electrical panel, which can sometimes trigger a contractor to need to upsize the panel if it doesn't have enough space for the additional load. And that can in turn trigger a service upsizing. And so Spur has been focusing on this issue because it's costly, it is a big technical barrier, and it's something that folks are worried about in transitioning to a lot of new electrical equipment. What we've done around this is we developed a brief that involved a lot of new research, combined both research from other organizations and our own research around the costs and streamlining measures that may be, and avoidance measures that might be required to address this problem. We worked with a group called the Panel Optimization Work and Electrical Retrofits Group, the POWER Group, that is a very large coalition led by Build It Green that is working on this specific issue. And we kind of corralled folks in that group to build this brief and get a really broad-based set of expertise accounted for. And we've since hosted briefings with city officials, with CCAs, state agencies, and as well as outreach to the media. And that's kind of an example of the kind of research to policy pipeline that Spur develops. Just going over the issue again, I mentioned this is a costly step. This sort of illustrates what it means to upsize a panel. I won't go into all the detail, but the panel on the left here, you can see the kind of infrastructure that a typical home has. And the red infrastructure is owned by the homeowner. The blue infrastructure is owned by the utility. Sometimes when you add new, as I mentioned, add new appliances, it'll trigger a service upgrade, meaning the line from the distribution grid to a home. And that can really skyrocket costs. And even if it's a small percentage of homes, you can see on the right here that, something like 5% of homes end up with costs over $31,000 or $40,000. But that's a huge expense. And even if a small number of people can't electrify, that's a big problem, especially if there are customers that are disadvantaged. So this is a really important issue for equitable decarbonization, and it's a thorny technical issue. But luckily, the power group and the folks that we've worked with have developed a lot of research around essentially avoiding this step, even when in homes with 100 amp panels, which typically contractors, a lot of incentives are in the National Electric Code, and other just kind of common practices lead people to upgrade when they may not need to. So we've been working on strategies to avoid that. You can see here that actually most homes, even homes with 100 amp panels, have a lot of free space, free panel capacity. And that's kind of where we're trying to access the capacity when it's there. There are the strategies that we identified in our brief involve using circuit controllers. These are devices that allow homeowners to switch between different appliances and throttle the load on one of the appliances, so that if you're reaching your maximum load on your panel, you can either throttle the load or switch between two different loads, and avoid the kind of safety issues of hitting a maximum load on your panel. We also recommend power efficient devices, 120 volt water heaters, or low power level 2 EV chargers, which are often right fitted for the needs of homes, but are often contractors or will recommend power inefficient devices. And if you use these kind of devices when you're electrifying, you can really lower the load that you're adding to your panel. And you can use things like a smart panel, which are kind of like allow you to switch the throttle loads across your home, and it kind of monitors the load in a more sophisticated way. So there are all these strategies that we're recommending to avoid. There's also streamlining strategies that we're involved in. These are just a few examples of the recommendations that came out of our brief. Things like subsidizing incentives for load management technologies that allow you to switch between different or throttle loads and switch between different loads on your panel. Another example is directing electrical utilities to authorize meter collar adapters. These are devices that can help kind of separate out solar energy or other kind of loads that you're connecting to your home. And we're engaged right now in proceedings at the CPUC to create maximum and target timelines for streamlining electrical service upgrades, so that when they are necessary, they don't take forever. And right now they do take forever. They take a very long time, which is adding a lot of cost and difficulty for our homeowners that have to do this. And these are just some examples of places where we're engaged right now. We work with the CCAs, with PG&E, the CPUC, and CC on different recommendations from our brief. That's one example. Another area that we've engaged in, and I'll just go through this quickly, is making it easier for contractors to install clean heating equipment by addressing issues in city codes or zoning codes, building codes, as well as permitting processes, which might be hindering electrification. We're looking at where contractors are running into problems, and then working with cities and CCAs, digital permitting companies, and advocates to identify recommendations for cities and state lawmakers. And we're developing articles, events, and to address these sorts of barriers. One example is noise ordinances. Spur did some research on cities across the Bay Area and their typical noise limits for mechanical equipment or any equipment at the that creates a consistent noise at the near the side or back setback of a building, and found that most heat pumps are too noisy if they're placed at a 3-foot setback of a building, and This is something that, you know, we don't want to create laws that make it very difficult for consumers to find the right technologies they need to electrify, but at the same time, we need to find a balance between quality of life and electrification. But as things stand, most heat pumps are actually most likely not being permitted in the first place at all. So there is this issue that we need to find ways to make it easier, but also and so that cities can actually gain the benefits of a permitting process that creates safety and quality of life. Some things to note, there are inverter technologies that are making it much quieter to install heat pumps. They basically ramp up for a very short period of time and create noise, and then stay at a consistent low level noise for a very long time. And it creates much less disruption. And so we put out some recommendations around this. I'm gonna, as my last slide here, highlight work from one of your members, Ori Paz. We've, in our recent article on city zoning codes and recommendations that cities can take to enable electrification, we really relied on Ori's presentation on zoning changes made in Menlo Park to enable siting and installing of heat pumps. These included things like creating exemptions for placement of heat pumps within setbacks or within garage spaces, and changing off-street parking requirements to allow installation of heat pump water heaters in garages. These recommendations were really helpful as a case study. And I think that's actually a good thing that to highlight that Spur does. We try to take changes and policies that are enacted in cities that work and that align with our wider policy goals, and advocate for them, expand their impact in the region. And so that is something that we're trying to do right now with some of the change that was made in Menlo Park. All right, I'll hand it over to Sarah.
Great. Yeah, hi everyone. So I want to talk specifically about a recent report that we released called Look Out Below. It's on groundwater rise. It focuses specifically on East Palo Alto, but the initial project and research was actually on a number of low-lying communities in San Mateo County, including Belhaven. Before I get to that, I wanted to share, so I mentioned we're focusing on sea level rise and other climate-driven natural disasters, thinking about how communities are planning for sea level rise with a focus on equity, nature-based solutions, and the compounding effects of groundwater rise, and how to think about cooperation across jurisdictions. I'm currently on the BCDC Regional Shoreline Adaptation Plan working group to figure out what the guidance is going to look like for jurisdictions for their sea level rise plans that are now required through SB 272. So there's a lot of interesting stuff that's going to come out of that. And I think that one way that we want to move forward is to help work with cities on these plans, think about public engagement around the plans, and then specifically around groundwater rise, integrating groundwater rise and issues of contaminated sites and flooding. Next slide. I just tried to change it on my own computer. So groundwater rise, I'll really quickly mention it. It is a hazard that is connected to sea level rise. Basically, we have groundwater that is close to the ground surface, and as sea level rises, it's going to infiltrate inland more, and it's going to start to push up groundwater so that it's closer to the ground surface. And this will be especially problematic during periods of heavy rains, which we have seen over the last few years. And there's a number of impacts that this can have on a community. One is, I mentioned contaminated sites, which I will talk about in a second, impacts to underground infrastructure. So it can deteriorate for example, stormwater infrastructure. It can, if there are already leakages or breaks in stormwater infrastructure, the groundwater can then enter that infrastructure and cause combined overflows, which leads to more flooding. This groundwater will, as sea level rises, also become more saline, which can deteriorate infrastructure, including roads, more quickly. So there's an impact on potentially increasing maintenance costs for a city to manage this hazard. And then, of course, it can also impact private property, and they're in various in low-lying areas, it can cause additional flooding during heavy rains. Next slide. So I wanted to show this is a map from the San Francisco Estuary Institute and Pathways Climate Institute that shows existing groundwater conditions. So this is depth to groundwater. The darker color is emergent. So, I mean, these areas are, some of them I think are, you know, kind of like flood regularly anyway. But you can see along the Camino, there is an area of flooding that occurs on occasion. And then, yeah, basically between 0 to 6 feet below ground, that's where groundwater can become more of a problem. That's where most of the underground infrastructure is located. And it's also more likely that there's not going to be enough space for rainwater to infiltrate the ground, and that's what leads to flooding. Next slide. These colors are slightly different. This is also from SFEI and Pathways, but this is what groundwater rise will look like with 1 foot of sea level rise. This is showing that the orange is groundwater within 6 feet of the surface, and the purple is emergent groundwater. So you can see there's these different areas that are going to start to have more flooding issues, but then also areas that we're going to need to think more about underground infrastructure. Next slide. This is just to show some of the different types of infrastructure that can be impacted by groundwater rise, sanitary sewers and stormwater. And yeah, there will be potentially, like I said, more maintenance that will be required. There's also different technical solutions and engineering solutions that will protect these systems, but many of these systems in our communities are very old, so they will need replaced so that they will be up to date. Next slide. So out of this project, I have ended up focusing a lot on the issue of contaminated sites along the bay shoreline and how this is contamination is going to interact with sea level rise and groundwater rise and coastal flooding. The Bay Area is lined with contaminated sites. When we were more of an industrial area, it was much easier to access ports and move goods when they were along the water. And next slide, I'll show a little bit closer into Menlo Park. These are the open and closed contaminated sites in Menlo Park along the water, and Bellhaven has a high concentration of contaminated sites, and these can be different types of sites from what they call leaky underground storage tanks. There's old gas stations, there's industrial spaces that maybe once used solvents, a variety of types of sites. Next slide. So from this report, and I should say, I forgot to mention at the beginning, this report was done in partnership with a group in East Palo Alto called Nuestra Casa. And we worked on this report together, worked on the research, and developed these recommendations for East Palo Alto, but then also so that they would be valuable for other cities, neighboring cities like Menlo Park, but also cities around the region that are going to be experiencing this issue. So I'll highlight a couple, making sure that all city plans and infrastructure projects assess the risks of groundwater rise and compound flooding. Consider adopting shallow groundwater rise overlay districts. One Shoreline is put forward this idea originally, and we kind of ran with it. And so this type of overlay district will specify design and retrofit requirements for underground infrastructure, roadways, new housing and commercial developments. And I'll highlight one more, which is in BCDC's regional shoreline adaptation plan guidance that they are putting forward. There is a section on contaminated sites and cities and jurisdictions in their sea level rise plans addressing the issue of contamination. And we are trying to push for there to be some sort of structure that cities can look towards for how to do this, because cities aren't the ones that are regulating these sites. It's the Department of Toxic Substance Control, it's the EPA. So what can that partnership look like, and how can we actually move forward on dealing with this contamination effectively? And I forgot to mention the issue of contamination. There's still research that needs to be done about how this will impact the public. But one key piece of research came out in the last couple of years, looking at how volatile organic compounds can be mobilized by groundwater and can actually enter into sewer infrastructure and transport into people's homes. We don't know what that concentration would then look like in people's homes, but you can go to the next slide, Sam. I'm working with a coalition of organizations, which we recently renamed ourselves to the Peninsula Accountability for Contamination Team. And this includes Bellhaven Empowered and Bellhaven Community Development Fund, which you may know, along with a number of other community-based organizations that work in San Mateo County. And we are, I forgot how to connect this to what I was just saying, but we are going to be thinking about, how can these plans actually work? Doing some community health assessments around what impacts this contamination mobilization currently has and could have in the future on the community. So there's a lot to be done. We would love to work with you on these things. And I'm really glad we got to share about this today. And we have a packed meeting on Friday. So I will be excited to bring back any comments from you all. And I think just to close out, we wanted to share, we partner with a lot of cities, as Sam said. We are currently working with San Jose on their climate adaptation and resilience plan. So that's one pathway of partnership. We also work on community and stakeholder engagement. We have worked on funding applications for regional, state, and federal funding opportunities with different cities, partly as both community engagement kind of consultant and also as a research consultant. We do policy review. So if there's policy coming up, we are very excited and happy to be part of that process and developing plans for the city and providing feedback. And generally, we think that Menlo Park can be a regional leader and has already shown a lot of leadership in the decarb space. And so we're really excited to work with you, and we would love to hear your ideas for opportunities to work together. Thank you.
All right, Sam and Sarah, thank you very much. So are there any clarifying questions from the EQC before we take public comment?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for a wonderful presentation, and thank you for all the work that you do as an organization. I really appreciate the research, education, and advocacy that you do, and work a little bit with Sam, and I'm very impressed with all the work that he's done, so. Thank you. My clarified question was open versus closed contaminated site. Does that mean closed, it's been cleaned up and it's good to go, and open, it's still a problem? Or is it one's operational still and one's not?
Yes, so one, open is operational, closed is non-operational. Wait. No, I apologize. Open is that remediation is still in progress. Closed is remediation is done. But part of the challenge is that we are going to have to go back and look at all of these sites because in the way that we have dealt with contamination in the past, we haven't taken sea level rise into account. And so, for example, when we are capping sites along the water, we're thinking about how to limit contamination from getting into the air and affecting the community, but now we need to think about how it could potentially get into the water.
Thank you.
I've got a quick one, for either Sam or Sarah. Could you double click a little bit on SB 272? I think we inferred what that is, but it'd probably be good to get everybody on the same page with what that requires folks to do.
Yes, SB 272 was adopted last year, and it basically gives the Bay Conservation Development Commission the ability to require cities to, or jurisdictions, and it can be multi-jurisdictional, to adopt and submit sea level rise plans according to a guidance that is going to be released in early 2025.
As part of their safety elements or as separate plans?
There's a couple different pathways that it can take. It is structured to be in accordance to with like safety elements and the local hazard mitigation process that's already sort of taking on some of that work, and also existing climate adaptation plans, but it will be sort of a separate process of BCDC approving the plans.
Thanks. Okay, any other clarifying questions? Going once? All right, Ms. Leonard, do we have any public comment side?
Yeah, let me open the public comment period. If you're in the room and you'd like to make comment, I have comment cards up here. We did receive one and we'll check online. Folks online, you can hit the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And if you're joining by phone, you can press *9 and we'll announce the order of public comment as we get one. Looks like we've Can you flip the time?
Yes.
Tonight we'll be able to do 3 minutes per public comment. So we'll start in the room with Hala, and then we'll go online to Brian Schmidt. And let's just pull up our time. Well, we could start and I could give you like a minute warning. That's
No,
not.
it won't take too perfect. Thank you. Hi, everyone. It's Charlotte Rajan, and I'm here as a public member, but I'm also volunteering for Menlo Park for helping with some of one of their electrification projects in Belhaven, and maybe Brian's going to have something similar. But the content was super helpful and very timely, so I will reach out, Sam, to find out more about all the guidelines that you have and all the best practices you can share with us. So thank you in advance for sharing all of your content and expertise. And my second comment, and I guess question, is more for Sarah. Do you also have, as per, any guidelines for communities to make better use of the rainwater, and how can we distribute that towards reusable water or potable water, etc.? I know that there's some more technological advancements there that potentially we could have. Thank you.
and keep your public comment. And we'll go to our second public comment online, Brian Schmidt. And are you able to unmute yourself?
I don't think so. But you should be able to.
Okay, Brian, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Brian Schmidt here from Menlo Spark. And I just want to thank Sam and Sarah for their great presentation. Spur does excellent work. That would include Sam's testimony yesterday at Campbell City Council, where they enacted a zero NOx ordinance. So I have a comment and a question. The comment was regarding the idea of a shallow groundwater overlay. I was thinking that might fit in well with Menlo Park's climate action plan and adaptation to sea level rise. So my comment is the next time the EQC is reviewing its work plan, it might want to consider including some discussion of that groundwater overlay as a potential action item in part of its review of the CAP. And then I have a question, if the chair allows, for Sam and Sarah, which is looking at the kind of the overlap between building decarbonization and earthquake resilience. I'm curious if Spur is interested and supportive of microgrids as a way to help achieve the resilience in earthquakes, something that would be done by electrification of buildings and then setting up power systems that will allow them to operate after emergencies and after blackouts. So love to hear any responses, and thank you very much.
Thank you for your public comment. I'll just make one last call before we close it. If there's anyone in the room or online, now's the time to raise your hand or grab a public comment card. Okay, seeing as none, we can return the meeting to you, Chair.
Fantastic. So why don't we open that for EQC discussion, and I'll kick that off by repeating those same two questions that we heard, Sarah and Sam, if that's okay, one from Michelle and one from Brian, around the rainwater ideas and then around the grids. So I'd be curious to the answers to those questions as well.
You want to
Sure.
start, Sarah?
Yeah, I'll start. On the rainwater side, we do not have work right now that is specific public like shareable documents that we can provide on that. We do, like I said, provide public comment on city plans, and some of the things that we recommend are around stormwater management, rain gardens, thinking about, how to manage stormwater better. I think that's something that we would like to work on. And if that is something that someone is interested in, having Spur work on, we would be glad to move that forward. And I think that's also something that this coalition that I'm working with, PACT, would be interested in as well. And Sam, if you want to take the beginning of the first question too.
Yeah, first off, I just want to say hi to Brian and John, who I work with regularly, and are great partners, and also a shout out to Menlo Spark, who is part of the BACA coalition that we work with, and just great partners here in Menlo Spark on our energy work, building decarbonization work. And I'm also kicking myself, Brian, on not including something about zero NOx ordinances in my presentation. It was very exciting to see Bay Area City yesterday enact a zero NOx ordinance for new construction. On the question of microgrids, yes, I think we're very much excited about the possibility of microgrids to connect benefits in earthquake resilience and building decarbonization and clean air and carbon reduction. I think especially with the really incredible advancements in battery technology that are happening, that have really happened over just the last few years. There's incredible cost reduction opportunities to start employing microgrids in communities. Sarah and I have worked on applications for funding with San Jose and ideas with cities in the South Bay on microgrids for public facilities, trying to kind of create a baseline of public buildings and spaces that people can go for cooling, for other kind of resilience needs, making sure buildings are in operation even during disaster events. And so there, yeah, I couldn't agree more with that kind of insight into how our areas are connected, our sustainability areas are connected. And we don't, again, it's similar. We don't really have to my knowledge, a single publication or document that kind of focuses in on the subject of microgrids, but we do advocate when we can and when it's appropriate for them. And we're happy to work with Menlo Park and others on solutions that involve development of microgrids. And Sarah and I were smiling because we had just had a discussion earlier today about ways that earthquake retrofits and decarbonization retrofits and other kind of resilience needs kind of overlap in our program areas. So it's timely to ask us a question about that.
Can I follow up on that one briefly? So one of our subcommittees that we have scheduled for later in the year is about distributed energy resources. And one of the topics that we have talked about was residential batteries. As you point out, I mean, some of the new batteries are very, very cheap. And it looks like there are easy ways to get benefit of that for resilience and also for reducing the cost of energy for households. So I'll reach out to you to talk a bit more about that. Yeah.
That sounds great. Yeah. Yeah, and I'll also note it's very exciting for building decarb advocates because when you are able to include solar or batteries along with heat pumps, the cost savings of operation really that's when people can really save money from electrifying. So it's another way in which it intersects with our decarb work.
Good question. I was curious, I just wanted to first say thank you for the presentation and helping us understand your work and some of these policy recommendations around groundwater rise as well as building decarbonization. My question is around nature-based solutions and how you think about them and how they kind of flow into your recommendations. I'm thinking in particular of Menlo Park is in the process of working on a urban forest management plan. And I'm wondering how we might tap into your ideas for how to solve some of these problems, especially for East Menlo Park and Belhaven.
Yeah, I mean, a big, like I was saying for the previous question, a big part of the challenge with groundwater rise and infiltrating the stormwater system is that the stormwater system in many cities, and Menlo Park is likely similar, is already at capacity during these major storm events. And so we definitely are in support and advocating for cities to look towards nature-based solutions and trying to find alternative ways to retain that stormwater so that the system can, deal with the additional groundwater and rainwater that is going to enter that system. It's obviously a very major infrastructure project to expand a stormwater system. And there's so many other benefits that come from nature-based solutions for stormwater management. Yeah, and so I think that we have been partnering with Save the Bay we've kind of worked with them on developing flood and nature-based solution recommendations for flooding. And I can definitely share that with you all if you are interested.
That would be great. Thank you.
One more quick one from me, given your priority areas, the main pillars, I'd be curious about the work that you've done around the intersection of transportation, housing, and climate, and how they're all interrelated and how they go back to this, to your point about developing the urban core. I mean, those are kind of the big three. So I'm just curious about the work you've done about around the intersection of those three topics.
Yeah, I guess I could start. So we have a lot of discussions and we do a lot of work at Spur trying to think about where to build. And I think a lot of the questions about where intersect with resilience issues. You know, we just had a discussion about this today about, you know, skyrocketing insurance prices in areas that are prone to climate hazards, and thinking about how the benefits of building, of easing restrictions on building and creating more opportunities to build transit-oriented, dense urban housing can help alleviate some of the strains that are developing in areas close to the urban wildlife periphery, close to shorelines, but also the challenge of, you know, those long-term goals running up against the short-term needs of people living in areas that maybe are more prone to climate hazards, and dealing with, you know, the distance that sometimes exists between the Spur's vision for the Bay Area and the more short-term needs and realities of equitable prosperity. And so I think a lot of our reports and our work you know, focus on those issues, thinking through those trade-offs and that kind of challenge of short and long-term priorities. Yeah, this is a discussion we just had earlier today, so it's on my mind, but I'll pass it over to Sarah for her perspective on this.
Yeah, I think that this is something that we are trying to figure out how to be a little more integrated in. Obviously, we do housing and transportation work, and it's so deeply tied to sustainability and resilience. In terms of things that we've worked on, the transit-oriented communities, we have done some research on the state policy for transit-oriented communities and how effective it was in actually moving forward transit-oriented developments. And so we provide a lot of input on how to improve that type of policy in the future, and the challenges that it has, and the struggles that the ways that it's not meeting the needs of jurisdictions. We were also very supportive of the BAFA bond, which is no longer going to be on the ballot for the region. But thinking about, we were part of kind of figuring out what that bond money was going to go towards, and we definitely are bringing to those conversations, like, how do we direct this funding towards areas that are not, you know, going to experience all these hazards. But I think we have a lot more work to do in making sure we are integrating this across all of our policy areas.
I'll also note we've historically been very involved in kind of the development of urban open spaces. We were involved in the Ocean Beach Master Plan in San Francisco, which was a very influential document which kind of mapped out a future for the Ocean Beach area in San Francisco, in which many of the recommendations have been kind of developed over the years and enacted. And we're hopefully gonna be involved we're still trying to figure out exactly what way in the waterfront sea level rise adaptation plan for San Francisco, and we're thinking about other ways that we can, those are the kind of projects that cities consider where all these questions often collide, and you have to work with thinking about how housing, commerce, transit can work around long-term planning for sea level rise and for providing inclusive public spaces to the public. So yeah, that's another area where Spur has been very active.
John, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about the building decarbonization work a little bit more and really elevate the research papers that Spur has put out on transitioning to zero pollution equipment, closing the affordability gap, and solving the panel puzzle. I think it's really helpful for cities, staff, and council members to take a look at those documents. I think by reading those documents, it will give the people making these decisions a little more comfort in adopting policies and programs that are gonna help cities decarbonize their buildings. So I think it's really great work and I appreciate it, and I wanted to just highlight it again. And the question is just like, how does Spur sort of get this great information in the hands of these decision makers, so that they have that information when they make these policy choices? What is the strategy that Spur uses to get the word out?
It's a really good question. Yeah, and thank you, John, for raising up our work in the building decarb space. I can give a few examples from my work right now. Like there are a lot of different channels, some more formal than others. Like one place where I've kind of dived headlong recently, which is a new experience for me, but it's proving kind of interesting and effective, is like official kind of formal engagement processes with state agencies. Right now, I'm engaged in 2 CPUC, California Public Utility Commission hearings, where our recommendations in our panel brief are being taken up by CPUC staff, and there's a lot of like impact from our research that I'm seeing there, which is sort of an exciting thing. But that's a little more of a kind of wonky, non-traditional like pathway. I think more classic to Spur is honestly like what we're doing right now, talking with you, meeting with, going to city council meetings, meeting with coalition partners who can expand the reach of our recommendations and refine them and help us write them in the first place. Trying to be very inclusive in our network is really critical. And yeah, I think we have a pretty good communications team too. We try to hold a lot of events. Historically, Spur's office space has been a gathering place for city planning folks and policy folks in the Bay Area. So we try to hold, create a lot of public or in some cases more kind of targeted meetings and convenings. But that's a slew of things. Sarah, you could probably add to what I've got.
Well, I'll just plug that we have an event on September 5th that is a briefing on the groundwater rise report, and the community organizations that are part of PACT will be joining, BCDC will be joining and talking a little bit about the Regional Shoreline Adaptation Plan. And it is really centered on San Mateo County and issues in San Mateo County, but also bringing these things to the region. So if you can join, you are welcome. It is at 5 p.m. on September 5th.
Okay, one last question. It sounds like you're doing a lot of research and making it publicly available. Do you also consult specifically with cities? Like, could we enter into an engagement, a formal, very specific engagement? What are the options there?
Yes, we do both. We generally have entered in those kinds of consulting structures to then hopefully create something that can be shared regionally, but can have very specific impacts and focus on the city. And yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Please. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was going to ask about the CPUC, so you already answered that one. This is more of a comment. I noticed in your document about the panel, you do talk about the alternative way of computing the load on a panel. So there are the two, the one that pretty much everybody knows about, and the other one that nobody knows about.
Right.
And my experience is nobody knows about the second one, and it's so useful. I mean, we all have access to the green download data, and pretty much everything fits into 100 amps. I mean, a lot of things fit in 100 amps. And I think that the more people know about that, the better, because you can fit everything into 100. And like I have 2 EV chargers, I have the whole house electric, it all fits into 100.
Yeah, yeah, I think that was one of the like key insights of that brief. It's one of the wonkier, like sometimes people might who are a little less versed might skip over that part of the brief, but it's actually very important. And we're trying to make it easier. I think the challenge is making it easier for contractors who aren't aware of that pathway to use it. Some of that, like what we're doing at the CPC right now, we're working to try and find a solution to get uh, peak load calculations that use 15-minute interval data more available for contractors so that they can make that calculation. And so there's like a number of different, and we're also, that brief informed, I think people in the power group right now who are working to submit comments to the National Fire Protection Association to like make certain clarifications and amendments to the National Electric Code that might make it easier to use that pathway. So there's a lot of like different kind of very technical routes that brief kind of implies that folks can start taking. And some of them are a little tough, but you're right. I think that if we could get everyone to use all the tools in the toolbox to electrify, it's much easier to
Yeah.
get houses
Well,
electrified.
it can make such a big difference in the cost to a homeowner about what to do, and they only need to know that it can be, that's available. It's really easy.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I think we are all questioned out. One small thing from my side, it'd be great, Sam and Sarah, if you wouldn't mind sharing the details of that event. Maybe we could put it in the minutes or the readout, so that way everybody has it. That'd be fantastic. And I just want to say thank you very much. That was a great presentation, and thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for
Okay.
having us.
Yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks. So I think with that, we will move on to item D3 in the agenda, where we'll discuss the student engagement goals and plans. The chair apparently will provide an overview on the topic. Yeah, why don't I think we can divide it up because we moved a little quicker. Maybe to tee this up, do you want to put the document up? Should we do that, or?
I can.
It's in the packet.
That will be awesome. So by way of context, Zach, John and I met with Mrs. Ward to talk about this. We had originally scheduled a subcommittee a little bit later in the flow because we just wanted to ramp it up, take some time, really get some pieces in place. But I think we came to a pretty quick realization that this one's trickier because we need to sync it up with the school year. So the longer it took, then it delays it for a school year, and then it delays it, and it sort of, by 2036, we'll get this thing done, right? So we wanted to meet with her really quickly, and this is much more of a plan in progress where we wanted to get everybody's input. So it felt like a collective strategy as opposed to the subcommittee coming back with something fully baked. So it was a way to, one, help us move a little quicker, to get some of these pieces already in motion with the current school year, and two, to make this feel like, yes, we have a subcommittee, but we really want it to be an EQC kind of pillar of how we operate. So that was the reason for accelerating a little bit. I don't want to read all this if that's okay, but just a couple of quick headline reminders. One is, I think we were all really excited about Mrs. Ward's participation. She was as much a spur for this as anything in the letters, and all the kids engaged, and Nancy and I going and talking to the kids. I mean, it was a great kind of start. So part of this is just carrying on the momentum of what had already been happening. And as I mentioned, we had the brainstorming meeting a little while ago. The idea was that for the remainder of this calendar year and early 2025, that becomes kind of a phase one. And I think we weren't sure about the term pilot or whatever, but we ended up on phase one, just figuring out like, how can we move quickly and get some pieces in place and then just kind of build on it and perfect it. So just please keep in mind, this isn't meant to be fully baked. It's much more around just moving a little quicker. And then And then, well, I'll skip to goal 2, and then that would eventually potentially move into something larger over time, depending on what the group wanted to do. So I'll skip over goal 2 around expanding it, but just this idea of we can potentially grow this over time. But with the main goal of getting started around a consistent, structured way to engage with the EQC and students to make sure that students really at different ages really feel agency over climate change, because I think we all are expert enough in this to know one of the most concerning parts of all the things that we're doing is our kids feel like they have very little control over this. And it's a problem that we've dumped in their laps. And, there's all the sort of mental health and everything that goes with all this. So a big part of this is just recognizing kind of where we are, when we're talking with our kids about all this and relieving, some of that feeling of hopelessness. So part of this is giving them agency for that. So what the subcommittee did is we started to look at 1 or 2 projects. The pilot would potentially look at 1 or 2 projects that students could engage on with the subcommittee. The projects could include things like, explaining something about the CAP and making sure that students really understood what the CAP looks like, or that they could do projects. I think we saw a bunch of projects that Layla had come up with, and we sort of saw them. And one was it Ocean Sally? What was the one about the ocean? I can't remember.
There are a lot of like plastic collection.
Yeah, that's right. Like ocean cleanup, right?
Yeah.
And so like put a big net out and do all this stuff. So the thing is, it was really amazing because they were just coming up with real solutions in their school work day. So it really wasn't foreign to what they were doing, and it wasn't really on top. It was integrated in the classroom. And really helping provide resources and support for teachers to do this. So I can tell you, based on some of the things I've done in my past life with K-12, this really will need to be a partnership. Us kind of going, well, here's some curriculum you can teach, or here's one way we think you should do it. That's tough. It might work with one teacher, but it's tough when you scale out because teachers don't do the same thing classroom to classroom, right? And things like this, we learned that there are new and emerging standards as well to teach and work on some of this stuff, but they are new and emerging. So, and I can tell you the pace of K-12, the next generation science standards, were rolled out, and I think it's been a decade, and there's still not standardization and consistent rollout. So things are not fast in K-12. So kind of, we want to avoid this monolithic, here's how you should do it, classroom by classroom, teacher by teacher, school by school, that kind of thing. So the teacher would determine things like the attendance protocol and the structure. It's really a dialogue with the teachers that decide to participate. And if we could go down a little bit. So what we started to brainstorm and where we really wanted this group's input was, keep going. I think there's a plan below this.
Is there a second page?
Oh, there we go. Yeah, thanks. So what we started to do is say, all right, what are some of the actions that we can build into this pilot so that we can get going somewhat imperfectly, but move a little quicker so that we don't miss this current school year. And that might limit some of the things that we talked about, like John had an idea of opening it up to a bunch of people and everybody participates at the same time. Totally valid. But it may be a little scrappy and ad hoc, and maybe we only get like 3 teachers, but at least we're moving now as opposed to a year from now, right? Because that's the challenge with the cycle. So I won't read all these, but a couple of things that we thought about as the action plan for this to move a little quicker is, hey, what are some simple steps that we can communicate to teachers so they can opt in? And so to John's point about more people participating, it really turns into an opt-in model. And then we kind of collaborate with those teachers to talk about what they might want to do. So it will be pretty consultative, I think, in the pilot phase here. We can list some example projects. We can do, I think Zach had said this one, or I don't remember who said what particularly, but there was this idea about how do we educate teachers on the climate action plan and the EQC. So we need to do a little bit of, level setting as well. And that might be where EQC members can kind of come in and talk to classes and students and things like that. We probably need to do like a kickoff Zoom at some point. So it's super practical. You know, let's, if we got 3 teachers that participate, how do we get them kind of kicked off and rolling forward in a pilot kind of mode? We can, you know, EQC commissioners, you can visit classrooms. This can all fold in. You can do like Nancy and I did, and you just turn up and the teachers might have a role for you during the school day, for example. And then there are a few more things about, you know, just the nitty gritty of emails and invitations and the program name and things like that. There are a couple of call outs here for, so our teacher partner, we'll have to check in with her because I know the school year's already started in Menlo Park City School District. So we'll have to see if this was included as an idea in their professional development days, which I think are done. So we'll check on that. But if we missed that window for any reason, you know, getting it in teacher professional development and generating interest, there is some support there. And then how do we eventually start to have this come together with some of the new teaching standards as well? There are new requirements out there, so we don't have to play the role of creating content to be taught in classrooms. That's already being sorted out on the school side. But eventually we want this to be a little more integrated. So I think everybody's probably read through this, but this is just the beginnings of I would call it a work plan, I guess. I don't know what the right term is, but we wanted to kind of open it up and see if this felt directionally correct. If there are any other ideas, any other input. So I think that was it. And do you guys, I mean, please chime in. Was there pieces of that I missed it?
No, that was great. I'm really supportive of this just because to Jeff, Chair Schmidt's point, really giving children and students the opportunity to feel like they have a say in the matter. And as he mentioned, you know, the state has a new requirement that climate has to be part of the curriculum. So I think the timing really works well for us to sort of introduce this type of a program. And I just kind of see it as this is a way for us, the EQC, to educate the students on what the city's doing, what the climate action plan is. And then the students have that knowledge they can take and create their own projects or educate their parents. I just see a lot of potential with this program, and I'm really excited to see you know, where we can take it, and you know, giving these kids a voice to you know, make comments at council meetings and having the background of what the city's doing and where they can advocate for different things. So.
Are we in discussion?
Not quite yet, because
Okay.
we'll do clarifying and then public comment and then discussion.
Okay. Oh, so this is part of the
Oh,
presentation.
sorry, we're a subcommittee, but
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
I think you presented it very well. I'm excited to hear what the rest of the commission has to say.
So one more quick data point and then we'll open it up for clarifying questions. So I think I found a little bit of a new soapbox around this idea of integrating housing and transportation and climate and everything else. So I did go to the last housing commission meeting and shared this during public comment to say we're working on this. And, you know, housing intersects with climate and we want students more engaged. So how would the housing commission do something like this? And so I'll very likely spend some time in Nevada after, the chair of the housing commission, Nevada Merriman, to just kind of further share, because I think she's open to looking at this as well. And I know housing isn't in the remit of this, but I think if there are other basically commissions that are open to students participating, then we can start to learn from each other. Students are more engaged in the city. So there's a little bit of work going on that goal too of expansion, but it's a little bit more behind the scenes. But I wanted to let everybody know that housing commission seemed open to it. So why don't we start with clarifying questions? That's sort of the presentation, and then you know, we can start to break it apart during the actual discussion part. But any clarifying questions?
The subcommittee is the 3 of you?
Yeah.
I don't think it's listed. Zach is not listed there.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah, you got shortchanged.
he's our secret member. Okay.
And he's Miss Ward's former student.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, so we should
Yeah.
definitely add Zach.
Thank you.
Okay, so if there are no other clarifying questions or oversights, Ms. Leonard, do we have any public comment on this item?
Let me open it up for public comment. If there's any public comment in the room, we have cards right here. You can take a moment to fill those out. If you're online, you can press the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen. And if you're calling in by phone, you can press star now. And we'll wait for folks in the room and online. Keep their interest. I don't see any online. And we'll get our 3-minute timer going and. When you're ready, you can get it in full. Thank you.
I think.
1 second.
Watch the video.
Okay, we'll start with Lynn in the room.
So I'm Lynn Bradlett, and first this, I commend you all. This is a very exciting idea, and I commend the forward-looking approach your commission has taken. And I know it's taken some time to get here. So I'm currently on another commission where, I'm interested, but does that fit with the guidelines? So some of us may run up into that. But I do want to make a few comments about the idea. So I'm with the group called Menlo Park Community Ready, and we're working to get the scouts involved. And they're, of course, going to the local schools in terms of some sessions that they could teach, like making tents out of tarps and ropes, teaching that, and then solar oven making, and then cooking. But I'm a retired teacher, and I have a few comments about the idea. So as a teacher, I taught a curriculum aimed at prepping for college, among other things, and we would have speakers come out that fit in, and it was a big boon to this, highly entertaining. One was about, I forget what the topic was exactly, but it fit, and it was so engaging and helpful. So I think that's a great idea. I have to ask, what do the students suggest? I imagine you've talked with them. They're probably filled with ideas. Maybe they have a club there. And, projects at home, things they could do at home. Games, creative, if they had, games. So I think this just really has so much potential. And, I just want to commend you for that, for doing this, making climate part of the curriculum.
Just one quick comment as well, just so we don't lose it, is there is a club at Menlo Park City, or sorry, at the school. So I probably should have mentioned it, but they will, that's a great idea, because I think there are students who are already kind of interested in that. So thanks for reinforcing that.
Okay, and we have our second public comment in the room, so if you like to do 3 minutes, you're good to go.
Thank you. It's Chandra Rajan again, and I also commend you. I think it's a great initiative. I only wish that we could do it for more schools. I feel just doing it for one school for a whole year is not enough, to be honest. And as a parent, my son is at La Entrada. I don't know if you support the school district there, but I know the PTA member who is the head of the environmental club. I'm sure we can get them engaged really quickly. I'm sure there's a lot of other parents at different schools that could probably do so. So I would encourage the commission to try to do this, not just for Oak Knoll. And secondly, the reason for some urgency, I think, is we're in an election year. And I think climate is going to be a big reason that people would want to go to vote. And we could potentially engage Menlo Atherton High School, where my daughter is a senior. There's a lot of 18-year-olds that could get to vote. And we could potentially get a club made there and try to get some action. So great initiative. Can we do it faster? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your public comment. We'll check one more time online. See if there's any hands raised. Doesn't look like it, so we can return the meeting to chair.
All right, why don't we open it for EQC discussion? Just on Charles' point, apparently my summarization skills are lacking tonight. We do want to open it up to more schools. For everybody's just a level set part of the discussion. I think the balance will be speed versus how we handle the number of schools versus what is this going to look like. So one of the things I think it's a totally valid point, and I love that you made it. The question is, if we have 20 teachers who are interested, how do we handle that? So we can't put the burden on city staff. I didn't mean to imply we were only going to do it with one school, but I do think we talked, I didn't mention it, but we did talk about, all right, what's the right balance between equal access, number of schools, ability to implement, but without putting a burden so that city staff has to run it all. You know, the question is, does the EQC run this? So that's, I'll use that to kind of kick off the discussion of, I think we'd all philosophically love to do it with 50 teachers, but then how do you run something like that? So just building on what Charles said. Anyway, I wanted to kind of add that out there because I probably could have mentioned that during the presentation, but it's, yeah, food for thought. So, yeah, and other discussion points about the program or ideas or thoughts.
You know, the point about more than one school came up last time.
Yeah.
I think that my personal inclination is it has to be at least two, cannot be just one.
Yeah.
Because one is going to be too narrow. The ideal would be at least three, but I think it has to be more than one.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's going to be too focusing on one school. But I totally understand it's hard to, we have to do a balance.
As I look at all the possible ideas, I notice I get a little bit overwhelmed, like, oh my gosh, this could be huge if we did it at every school, everywhere. And I notice if I think about making it more simple, especially to start, like simple and clear. So if this is about really like helping these young people feel agency and a sense of control in the face of climate change, which is essentially doing something that, and we want to bring in the young voices into the EQC and maybe bring some of the EQC voices in education into the classrooms. That could be a very simple thing, like, hey, like a request form. Hey, if you're teaching about climate change and you would like to have a representative from EQC come and witness your students' presentations, here's the form to fill out. And then one of us says yes, and we go, and then we come back and do a little report or something. Like that just seems very simple and easy to implement. And if they wanted us to come and actually speak, we could easily create a presentation on how to make a public comment at EQC or at City Council. And maybe that's more appropriate for like middle school and high school. I don't know. But we could easily have that. And then we could, if they could request, like, hey, we would love to have someone come in and do a 15-minute presentation. Someone makes the presentation, we all have it, we go and we do it. That could be like two easy ways to go back and forth. That wouldn't involve, I don't know, I feel like it meets the objectives, but doesn't overwhelm like the system. Of course, I would love to do all the things, but I think we just keep running up against like what actually is our role as EQC and how much staff time do we have, et cetera. So the other thing I just wanted to add is that the AP Environmental Science teachers at MA are a really great resource. So there's 2 people there and their students need to do, I think, like 5 hours of volunteering, maybe each semester. And so that might be something to consider, like maybe if they have an advocacy bent, we could encourage them to come to city council meetings. Okay, that's it.
Just building out on that one, I think that engaging older students, it benefits everybody. Because the younger students will see the older students will take responsibility of the younger students. I think that dynamic works very well.
So I'll jump in as well, just to build on the spirit of what Nancy said. I think the only thing, the speaking is great. The only thing I think it limits us with is what we saw really, which was like, here's a project. So I like the speaking thing and I love the simplification and we do have to figure out how to operationalize this, but then maybe a question for the group and then eventually city staff is, what if we go in and we preliminarily talk about the climate action plan and we present it as, I don't know, 6 kinds of we give them projects that they could choose from. Like we don't create the project, but I mean, and Lynn could probably comment on this. We give them subject areas that might fit with their potential curriculum, and then the teacher does what makes sense for them. So there's not burden on us to do things, but we give them ideas based on the climate action plan, and then the teacher could come in or the students could come in and share what or we could go to them and they could share the project. So the only thing I'm building on yours is I would love it to be a little more hands-on and project oriented, experiential learning, right? As opposed to just listen to another adult present, if that makes sense. And we can give the teacher a lot of creative ideas and suggestions. We can even go as far to like go to Raft and get there's a place you can go where you can get like low cost teacher supplies, and we can even help design kits and things like that down the road. But I think just giving them ideas that are aligned to the climate action plan and then letting the teacher take it from there.
That seems
Could be.
great.
Could be a way to
Yeah.
make it more experiential.
I like the idea of creating some educational component for the teachers. So one of us could go out and like, if we had a group of teachers who were interested, we could talk about the high level picture. And then these ideas, that also seems manageable.
Yeah, because it's just another form of presenting, right? It's
Yeah.
sort of, this is what a climate action plan is. Get creative, like,
Yeah.
we might not be able to use them in the actual climate action plan, but I don't think that was our experience. We're not
Yeah.
working on cleaning up the ocean, but they felt just as much enthusiasm
Yeah.
for those projects versus if they'd done like an EV project, or sea level rise. So
Yeah.
Just building on what you said, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, from the beginning, I've loved the concept, but I've wanted it to be developed collaboratively and equitably throughout the city of Menlo Park, whether it's Menlo Park City School District or MA or Ravenswood. I really think it's important that when something is designed, that all the stakeholders get input from the very beginning. So it's challenging because we gotta like figure out how to connect with all these different folks, but just thinking maybe one idea would be like, we create a email or a document or something that says, the Environmental Quality Commission is embarking on this concept, and somehow get it to all the teachers, explaining what we have in mind, and then sort of like inviting people that are interested to come to a meeting. And so we're not going to every classroom, every other day, but we have one meeting to sort of listen to the teachers, what their ideas are for this program. And we can just kind of have a back and forth with the teachers throughout the city, whether it's a public school, private school, disadvantaged community, whatever. And then sort of use that as a foundation for building the program, and then kind of see where it goes and what sort of resources are going to be required based on the input that we get from all the different teachers.
How does everybody feel? Because that almost becomes a kickoff event, right? So
Right.
we're opening the aperture to not design it ourselves, but sort of collect ideas. And for teachers who are ready to roll, like Layla, then she could just go ahead, like we could give her pieces and she could be like one of the speakers at the kickoff. So that's another way to look at it, is we pull teachers from MA and Ravenswood and everywhere else in to say, we want to do this collaboratively with you, but we open the aperture.
To me, that makes a lot of sense. I think it would necessitate going slower.
Yeah.
But it would be like going slower to go faster ultimately at some point. So I think taking time to do it right up front. And we've heard this concern about making sure that this kind of program is available all across the city.
Yeah.
Every time it's come up.
Yeah,
I think
because
we want to listen closely to that and at least invite everyone, and whoever shows up, shows up.
well, and I think to build on your idea, it's going faster in the sense of inclusivity. It doesn't mean like we could get to this vision of like 3 teachers participating right away, which is cool, right? I think the goal is, we just didn't want to miss a whole school year by deliberating as an EC in October or whatever our original timeline was. So that's one idea is
Could be, like, even in the kickoff.
Right.
It could be, we are happy to come, like, if you're doing something and you want it witnessed by us,
Right.
we're happy to come. We're welcome to come to the EQC meetings anytime.
Yeah.
And that could be the easy thing that we say we want to do.
Yeah.
And then we have other ideas that we want to more collaboratively create with you all.
And we can see it in
You
like.
can also try to make, if there's only one school, so I was strong about saying at least 2, but if there's only one, we can make it clear that that's a dry run, or, I mean, it's kind of, it's just, we're just trying to get the ball rolling
I don't
this
think there
year.
has to be just one though. So just to build on that idea quickly, I think I'm happy to go to Will and Gina in Ravenswood and get something going there straight away and get something going in MA through our contact. So we could be in 3 schools who are pre-pilot, so to speak, who are, let's just call it, they're sort of testing things out, but the actual full participation is in this kickoff
Right.
meeting. So they almost become examples of people who are helping us build the pilot itself. But we don't say like, how am I trying to articulate this? We don't say we favored these 3 to go first and then everybody else has to wait. We just use these 3 because we knew folks and we wanted them to start playing around with it, and they almost become part of the subcommittee in a way. Sorry, I probably shouldn't say that out loud, but they become our advisors to the subcommittee. And then the true participation is what John said about a kickoff meeting. But then we have 3 presenters who can go, and we've already kind of been playing around with this idea. I mean, we could.
I have an idea, and it might take too much bandwidth to do. What if we like worked with like AP Environmental Science students and empowered them to go into the 4th grade classes? Like we do like this first big, like kind of bigger level discussion of what the climate action plan is and how you can work with the city and actually do something besides studying it. And then kind of work with them to create a more simplified version for 4th graders. So, I mean, I was in the APES class at MA and I remember we had to do a bunch of volunteer work, and that would be another way for them to get their hours as well. And then that's, that initial thing, we can push it down the line.
Well, it wouldn't have to be either or.
Built
Yeah.
on what I was thinking, which is that a definition of how we want to engage going forward is a good thing to nail down now. So for instance, we might decide to assemble that a group of parents and teachers might really be better placed to lead this. The idea of having a kind of a kickoff where we announce a kind of a call for interest, that sounds great. I think the people who are running the classrooms and the people who are learning in the classrooms ought to be taking the lead on shaping it. And I hesitate to think that really we should get involved in any way in curriculum, because my light observation of my mother's teaching career, and Lynn, you can help me here, is that it's an artistic thing. And so I believe that it has to do with the style of the teacher, what type of curriculum to pick up. And fortunately, California is requiring that curriculum be taught, so we wouldn't even need to get involved in that. I like where we're going with this call for action and putting it out immediately to the whole city and saying, seeing what forms from the people who are out there, and honoring ourselves as invited speakers. Because there's another reason, which is that we are city government. And we need to appear and be equally accessible to all citizens and making our services equally accessible to all citizens. And we could do that right off the bat by having it really be driven by the community. Our idea, our resources we're happy to add, our publicity via the megaphone that is the city. Putting it in the hands of the teachers and the parents and the students who arise could be a wonderful way to go, because it would also survive Toast Jeff.
Yeah, well, and yeah, that's a key. We can talk about that later, but I'm gonna be like a dog with a bone on this one, post Jeff.
Yep.
So, but I think it's, I love that too, because it's inclusive of Zach's ideas, great. If students run with the ball, great. If they don't, we have a plan B. Well, I think we're building in enough flexibility that says if students run with the ball, we're good. If for some reason they can't fit it in, then we have teachers, we have parents. We're almost sort of, I hesitate to say this, but we're almost expanding our collaborative group to whoever would like to opt in, and we're kind of building it together. I wouldn't want to, the only caveat to that is I wouldn't want to slow roll anybody like Lola who's gonna do this kind of stuff already. She's already doing it. She's doing it through the letters and through her lessons and all that. So if there are teachers who are doing that, we can also collect what they're already doing. I'd love to hear what the MA Environmental Studies teachers are already doing. So, and then we can bring that to this sort of kickoff idea to say, oh, well, here's the city team and we're going to talk about this. Here's a few teachers who are working on things. Maybe some kids have some ideas. So but I want to take a quick pause in the discussion. Oh, go ahead.
I think you're gonna go where I was going, was like, if we go down this path of notifying everybody of this opportunity and then we host this event for stakeholder input. Do we need like a facilitator to manage that? Because it's gonna be a lot of input. And then just staff, like,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on how this would roll out and what resources would be required of you? Or, I mean, can the EQC even do this sort of thing where we're hosting a meeting outside of a meeting? I just love to hear your thoughts.
So, I mean, at some point we have to talk about the post the Jeff thing.
Yeah, well, we can talk about
Much as our heart.
that.
Well,
Yeah, we can talk about it. So why don't we do this? If it's okay, I was going the same place that John was going, is I wanted to take a quick pause and see what both of you thought, and then we can come back to that.
okay, so forgetting about the posting, the comment I was going to make is that, the main concern I have is about teacher resources. I mean, their time is limited, right? So you have one teacher that actually has the energy and stuff, and so that's an easy one, but the other ones may or not. So students are high energy if they are engaged. So the other people that are not listed here in that action plan are the parents.
Yeah.
So I would just add them somewhere because they are free and quote free resources and they might be added.
Exactly, yeah.
I can start.
Yeah, please, have your own.
The first piece is going back to the EQC's role around providing policy recommendation to the city council. So it wouldn't be appropriate to have the EQC as EQC members going into classrooms and representing the EQC and going to community events. However, there is history and there are opportunities for the EQC to develop these sorts of tools and resources that can be shared with the community. I was thinking about the work prior to my time with the city that Commissioner Schwartz did around tenant protections, and that was used as a tool to educate, staff and council. So I think there's an opportunity to think about what that balance looks like. Maybe the event is a special EQC meeting, and we're able to kind of have a richer conversation with teachers, and able to kind of share a physical product with them, like one of SPUR's guides, that the EQC develops rather than, going around classroom to classroom. And that's also where Zach's idea of kind of empowering teachers of high school students, to work with youth can kind of create that machine, where the EQC is providing like the influence and some of the groundwork, but not, wearing the Menlo Park City hat, in classrooms. So that's some initial thinking that would have to be shopped a little bit, within our department, the city manager's office. There is kind of a rule of thumb around anything that requires more than an hour of staff time. It's best practice to bring it up to city council. And so maybe there's even an opportunity to present this to city council, too, and see if they want to allocate staff time or resources, to do that.
Well, they did by instructing us to include community outreach in our work plan. I think that the leverage point for community outreach is these students' parents,
Yeah.
but nevertheless, they instructed us. And therefore, it's on our work plan and therefore staff hours are dedicated. It's not additional.
I go a little further and we can suss this out. I mean, this was part of the report out that you guys made me do. I'm just kidding. No, I was happy for somebody else to do it, but I only jokingly, but yeah, I mean, I remember Cecilia Mayor Taylor commenting and going, oh, I love the innovation. I love it. So it won't be, we're not springing this on them untold, right? But it's then we're taking it to the next level, as you said, and saying, okay, this is what we think it's gonna take from a city staff and an EQC, and then just getting them to your point, I don't think we're asking permission, we kind of already have that, but then whatever we call this, the work plan or the action plan probably needs a run by city council.
And I'll share one other piece. Our team's most excited about outreach in Bellhaven as it relates to home upgrade, and that's a big city council priority. And so any opportunity to kind of link to amplifying spending that grant and getting homes electrified in Bellhaven would probably require less administrative thinking.
How does everybody feel about, sorry, I want to come to Ori too. Let me plant a seed and then we'll come to Ori. Think about that too. We could we could give teachers a little less free open choice about the subject. So don't talk about EVs, don't talk about whatever. We could steer them towards some of these big ticket things that might make it be easier to get through as well. So I just want to plant that seed. We'll come back to Ori, but we could steer teachers a little. Did you have?
Yeah.
Oh,
I think the biggest thing, and I think we tried to, in working with the subcommittee, tried to kind of look at it through a lens of, you know, what is the subcommittee going to be doing? What is the staff involvement? And staff is kind of like a resource for the subcommittee, but a lot of this being kind of steered, and the ownership being on the subcommittee to try to help to kind of expand our reach. So in that same kind of bucket, it's staff to the EQC subcommittee, to the teachers, to the students, to the younger students.
okay. Could you do that one more time?
Yes, sorry. No, it was to Commissioner Meyer's point about, you know, kind of using these different layers
Yeah.
to support kind of cascading impact. So it's not, it's trying to look at how can we limit the amount of staff resources and capacity needed by being a sounding board for the subcommittee,
Right.
and then the subcommittee steering the majority of it, and then we can let you know when things need to go back to the commission.
Got it.
You know, flag things for the clerk to review, to kind of keep things appropriate, and then the subcommittee can direct the work, and we can try to align it again with the other outreach goals, because we really need to move on those.
Yeah.
And we can also help, you know, to let the subcommittee know, you know, within the actions that we've outlined, right? Because it's an item that we'll probably get to in the reports, right? But we have kind of a prioritized list of actions for implementation of the cap. And so if you want a prioritized list of staff projects or projects that could be great for the community to take on, that could be a good resource that we could help to give to the subcommittee.
So if I'm hearing you right, the notion is that there are a few specific, concrete, high leverage opportunities to have the community pile on a learning effort around initiatives that the city is already doing related to CAP, specifically the electrification work in this whole city, particularly the eastern sides of it. So your notion is, I believe I've understood that the staff would be very effective in this particular outreach task if we were to design it around the CAP work that you're already doing. And it would also allow parents and students to become more aware of that work. And it wouldn't necessarily require us to scope it down and try to figure out how to scope it down.
Well, I'm building on what you said. I think it was always the intention to align with the cap, but I would say there's cap and then there's prioritized cap, right? Which I think is what you're both saying is, so maybe it's just a bridge of saying, okay, maybe 3, 5, and 6 are the priority. So well, I don't know, sorry, I just made that, I totally made that up. But you know, whatever that prioritized list of actions that are more imminent or have money or whatever it is, we can steer folks toward that. But to your point, I don't think we'd ever want to steer folks off of the cap, because that's part of the fundamental principle of getting involved is, hey, you're sort of contributing to the city's cap plan.
Yeah.
Right?
It gives us a theme. I
Yeah,
think we've
yeah.
been struggling for a theme. The theme is the city of Menlo Park is implementing a climate action plan. And this year, it's working on these two actions to electrify. We invite the community to investigate opportunities for school and youth group educational chances. And we want to provide as much information about these projects as possible. And we send that call out across the city and see where we go from there. But I think scoping and themes, that's gonna be our friend, particularly in a post-Jeff world.
I have a couple of thoughts.
Yeah, please.
I'm appreciating this. And there's something about, like, maybe we could create a deck, maybe even a video that could be on the city website. That here's the climate action plan. Here's what you can do as community members. Take this video, share it with the people in your world. And when I'm thinking about our role as a advisory body to city council, what we essentially need to be better advisors is input from the community. So I think there could maybe be a separate little video that's like, we would love having members of the community come to our commission meetings. We want to hear from people of all ages. If you're talking about this in your classrooms, come and join us. Just like a call out, that doesn't even have to be like a meeting, but more of a open, something on like the city website or on the commission webpage. It's like, we really want to hear from you. And here's like the ways you would do it. You know, you gave that great presentation on how to do a public comment. We could make a younger person version of it, but just have these kind of resources for the community that are available all the time.
Yeah.
You know, it's a little tricky to make them available because I'm building on your idea about putting them on the website. And then the last meeting we had about how the website kind of ends up being a top secret lockbox in terms of how much information it gets out. So I would love to figure out where else we can put it.
Well, if we have it online somewhere, then we could start getting it out to the community, you know,
Yeah.
as long as there was a link.
Yeah.
So I want to bring us back to, I think what both Rachel and Ori were saying, just to make sure. Because I feel like there's a path forward, at least it's emerging in my brain. So the subcommittee, the three of us, could come up with a more detailed plan based on this guidance. And let's just say, for discussion's sake, it's a kickoff call to action, open, forum meeting where teachers and parents and students and others kind of come and understand what we're doing. We would form that. We could do some of the work around that so that city staff doesn't have to do it. So as a subcommittee, we can potentially do some of that work. We probably wouldn't be the presenters in that meeting. So let's say this was the kickoff meeting and there were 50 people in the room. It'd probably be like Rachel and Ori being the presenters for the city. So we would, as a subcommittee, put some work into making the meeting happen, but we wouldn't be the spokespeople, which I think is probably fine. And then, but we could be there taking notes and we could be the background operations folks to get it going. And as long as we're not the presenters and the spokespeople for the city. So I want to stop there. Is that accurate, or did we even take it too far there? Are we not allowed to do? Can we send invitations out to this thing? Can we be there? Can we be playing a role when we set this meeting up, or are we not allowed to even do that? Or would we have to do it as a private citizen
I mean,
thing?
that's where we ended up with all the other
I know.
outreach stuff. We had to do it as,
Which I think is also an option, but I guess,
I think we would need to explore that with our clerk.
okay,
Yeah.
so.
I also wanted to offer to another city kind of channel and resource that would be appropriate for the EC to engage the Youth Advisory Committee. We've been in communication with them and they want us to present at another future meeting. Figuring out what date would be best. So that might be an opportunity to have the Youth Advisory Committee be the speakers or lead this sort of meeting, and maybe it's during one of their regular meeting times, maybe it's during one of our meeting times.
I have a light bulb idea though.
Please, I'll.
So, no, I'm just spilling away. So we can't our action has to stop at a certain point. could the youth advisory group take that action because they're officially empowered by the city? So could we come up with all the things and go like, here's the email you need to send? And someone send, like, we could do the work, but we can't push the final button, or we can't be a presenter as a subcommittee, sorry. So that's the line, right? We can't do the work, but we can prep others to do the work. Is that a good way to say it?
Executive.
Yeah, we could do a presentation, as long as it's behind the scenes, we could do a presentation that you guys would then approve. So we can do some of the work to lay the foundation for a kickoff meeting. We just can't be the people pushing the button on the invite or being a presenter, but the youth advisory committee could. And
And it
so,
would probably
you
change the
would get this,
presentation.
yeah, you would do like any other presentation we give you, right? You would vet it.
So you would check it out with the clerk.
Yes.
Yeah.
That sounds a bit borderline.
It feels a little borderline
Yeah.
to me too, but I like the idea of tapping into the youth advisory
Yeah, I think that's
council
interesting.
because they already exist, and if they want to get involved in issues around climate, great.
If they're
Let's figure it out.
allowed to take, my only eureka moment is like, if they're empowered to take action on behalf of the city and
They
we're,
may or may
we're not, then they might be our out for not putting the burden on city staff. Okay,
And I mean, this doesn't have to be done by the EQC. Worst case,
I agree, but my only,
I mean, what's the benefit of this being, just for a second, right? What's the benefit of this being done by the EQC besides the fact that we're all interested in doing this?
well, it's climate, right? It's sort of, I think the overarching goal is, I mean, we all kind of said it, is how do we spur an idea forward that's gonna ultimately be beneficial for both the city and students, and to reduce anxiety and all the other things we talked about. So I think the EQC is advisors, and the way I describe the EQC to people, rightly or wrongly, is, I mean, Charlie, we talked about this, is we're resident activists. Like, of course, we're advisors when we're sitting around this table, but we all know all of us are out there beating the bushes, doing so much more as residents. So it's bringing this, I mean, to your point, Eduardo, it's bringing the spirit of that a little bit more to this table without crossing that line.
Yeah, so let me try to answer my own question, is because we are, part of our charter is a cap. And this fits within the cap.
Yeah, it's a different
It's not a random thing, it's something that is actually directly relevant.
we
to the
could
cap.
classify it as a creative outreach mechanism for the CAP, because that's gonna be part of what we need to educate people on is,
Right.
and it's student, so I would say if we need to be fully following the rules, this is just a version of outreach that some of us would maybe take a more active role in helping with, but not pushing the button like Nancy and I experienced. Sorry, go ahead, John.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, I mean, like, we are an advisory body to the city council, so that's really what we're doing here is giving this idea to council, and then they have to decide if they want the city to do this.
Yeah.
I don't think we've ever been an outreach tool. So we're just discussing this idea for a program to get students and youth engaged and ideas on how to do that and how it might come about, but ultimately, we're asking council, can you direct the city to do this, right?
I mean, that's the role of
Yeah,
this body.
But I would project optimism into that. I think we will have 0.0% chances of saying like, no, this is terrible. And sorry, I'm not trying to prejudice anything, or just, I feel like the time I've mentioned this to anybody on council, they're excited. So I hear what
yeah, I
you're saying.
wasn't
but
implying that
like,
they would be opposed to it, I was just saying that we may not be the people, the individuals actually in the
Right.
program.
Right, right,
It's
right.
gonna be the city staff.
Yeah, the question becomes, I think, the question that both of you will ask is, what are we allowed to do as a subcommittee? I was trying to follow Ori's structure here, is like, what can we do as a subcommittee to move this forward? Then how do we vet that with both of you? And then you advise, so what can we do and what can't we do as a subcommittee? And then I think as an EQC body, we're gonna be a little more limited because we're an advisory group, but the subcommittee's got a little bit of free reign in the short term. And then what we have to do is figure out, how does this sort of live on once it moves out of subcommittee? And can we do that in a way that's automated is the wrong word, but low burden.
Scalable.
Well, yeah, scalable and low burden, low touch. Could like the
Yeah.
youth advisory committee pick it up? You know, I think that's, you know,
Yeah.
maybe if we lay some foundation. Or would the community pick it up?
The other angle I was thinking was, again, it's a resourcing issue, is if we were not to have the resources to do it as a EQC subcommittee, there might be parents that might want to do it,
Schools,
and
yeah.
part of that can be done that way.
Yeah, I love what Adora's saying, because what if it's schools that pick it up? What if we commit to, you know, either, sorry, I'm not committing you, this is just hypothetical, but like once a year, you join an hour-long Zoom to review the climate action plan with 4 schools across the city. Like that's the totality of your commitment is, here's the climate action plan, if you've got projects, and then PTAs pick it up or schools pick it up, because it really is meant to be a meet them halfway kind of thing. So we can flesh that out a little bit as well, always conscious of not giving the 2 of them more to do.
But I think there's something about building a bridge between the cities and the city and the school districts that's really important.
Yeah.
Because they're they're separate
Yeah.
jurisdictions.
They're
almost.
governed, well, the fire district, the
Right.
city and the school are all governed differently.
So I like the idea
Yeah.
of building bridges, and
Yeah.
this feels like one great way of doing it, but maybe it's a bigger question of how do those conversations happen regularly? Like, as an example, when we went to Ms. Ward's classroom, the children came up with projects related to the things that they saw in their world. So most of their recommendations were around how to make their school better.
Right.
Over which the EQC has no authority. So, but like being a bridge back to, say, the school district to make some, you know, changes. And I think the bond measure that's coming up this fall is a great example of how we're gonna
Yeah.
meet their needs. But I just think more communication at all of these levels would be
Yeah.
awesome.
Well, so I mean, this is amazing because I feel like we're getting our teeth into some things that maybe the subcommittee goes back and takes another run at this. I think if both of you ask some key questions about, you know, a kickoff workshop, what would that look like? What can we do as a subcommittee? Just sort of helping us suss out that preliminary thing. I feel like we're gravitating towards some kind of an open call kickoff meeting of some sort, not necessarily run by us. Maybe we can do some background work. And then we can re-meet as a subcommittee and come up with a more concrete action plan that takes what we had on the screen and kind of boils it down into something we re-review with the group.
I wonder, I can't get off this idea that this is positioned ultimately as our job to engage the community with the EQC. And the city's job to work on this project that's at the top of the cap to electrify in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And that our recommendation is, to the city council, this is a very promising community outreach idea on behalf of this project to go into electrification. It scopes it way down, but it also scopes it way up by making it a small actionable thing. Everybody knows what it is right away. They can cling on to it, and the city would be able to publicize the work that's happening, and we're just helping.
Yeah.
This is our idea for helping.
I mean, I think that's an option. Electrification could be, I mean, we can sanity check that as well with a couple of teachers just to see, because
I mean, not the young kids, it's gonna go
Yeah,
way over their
it's
heads.
gonna be, that's kind of where I was going, is it
Yeah.
sort of skews.
They're looking
toward-
at trash.
Yeah.
Heat, cooling, you know, the
Yeah.
classroom is too hot, there's trash on my school campus, the oceans are suffering, the animals. Yeah, food waste, that's what they're seeing and that's what they're concerned about, like how their water's heated.
So
They
the
can hear it.
water heat, all right, but it's too hot and cold in the school. If
That's a legit one.
That's a legit, well, I love that idea, because if it's about the fact that the AC and the heat are not functioning properly, the heat pump that we,
Yeah.
you know, that we would be aiming to put in would manage it much better.
Yeah.
And so the students might think, wow, when this bond comes in, we'll put in heat pumps, which I think actually might be the idea, I don't know. But it could gel for them because it is connected to their
Yeah.
world, and I think,
Yeah. That's a very specific.
There are other students who would be benefiting from getting these heat pumps in another part of the city. For most kids don't live in any one part of the city, so it'd be a different part of the city for most of them. Other kids that are getting this nice.
I think, the money is to be spent on single family homes, so.
That's perfect.
It's, I guess, somehow connecting the students' concern with the extreme heat in their classroom. And here's something that you can put in your home where you might be experiencing extreme heat as well. But I'm just thinking about the process, like, I think the subcommittee needs to go back, think about this, talk with staff, and then I think the process would be the subcommittee makes a recommendation to EQC.
Yep.
EQC says yes or no, or modifies it, and then that recommendation goes to council, and it's basically council. Our recommendation is that you allocate staff time to this sort of an outreach program that involves students, and that's kind of how it plays out, right?
And I think if everybody's okay with this, I think we do a quick zip back by Layla. We talked to Kristen, we talked to Gina. You know, we get some contacts at, Ravenswood, MA, Menlo Park City School District.
And
So-
Los Lumitas.
And yeah, and I don't have a contact there. So, but like if somebody has a contact, so
You
we,
do.
do we?
I think
Yeah.
one is right in that row.
Oh,
But
good.
then there's
So-
all the
so-
private schools, of which there are a lot, and there's no central
But-
mechanism to reach them.
I'm not, sorry, let me carry on the thought, but
Sorry.
you're right. No, what I was saying is I always like to be able to sanity check it, but this discussion is just a short-term sanity check back with them. We would still open the broader one to everybody, but this is like, okay, this is what we're thinking. I wouldn't want to do this as non-education expert, so I would want to at a minimum talk to at least a couple of school folks and go, this is what we're thinking. You know, city staff's gonna validate it with their process, but we have to validate that with the school. But yeah, you know, so whether we pull in Los Angeles, I can never say that. Whether we pull them in or not, at least we need 2 or 3 school professionals telling us that'll work or that won't work. That was all I was.
Can I ask a very silly basic question? So fourth graders are very different than high schoolers, right? And the person, the teacher that we're have identified is a fourth grader teacher.
Yeah.
The rest of the plan doesn't talk about whether it's what grade we're targeting, but a lot of these details will vary depending a lot on whether you're talking high schoolers or middle schoolers or grade.
Totally.
I don't know how that fits, but
Well,
it changes the whole thing, right?
I don't want to prejudice us toward the final product, but I'd love what Susanna's saying about maybe the older students are a little more electrification, you know, maybe.
Right, that's what.
But then, and then as they get younger, to Nancy's point, we make it a little broader, like it's about EVs, you know, it's cars. I mean, fourth graders get cars, right? So they get other things. So there's parts of the climate action plan that I think, I hate to say it this way, but it's like a pyramid. Some parts can be that every grade level discussion. And then there are certain parts of it, the more you go up the the K-12 ladder, the understanding is gonna go way down.
Yeah, so what I was thinking is that as far as implementing this thing, depending on whether you're targeting one or the other,
Right.
the dynamic changes. If you're talking about the high schoolers, you talk to the students. You're talking about directly,
Yep.
right? You're talking about fourth graders, you have to talk to the teachers
Yeah, yeah,
as a mediators, right? And then the resourcing also changes and the whole thing. So.
yeah.
So I think that the plan that you have here, even though the details are not greatly specific, in the back of your mind, you're thinking about fourth graders, I think.
Well, a little bit.
Because
I
that's the
think-
teacher we have.
I think, yeah, we started out there, but part of the reason for leaving that so loose and open-ended was so we could have this discussion sooner rather than later. And I want to just check, do you guys feel like, do we have enough to go on? If we did another subcommittee meeting, I think we got a pretty good steer. I mean, I want to check that with both of you. And then we, of course, need to pull our friends in over here and help steer it even further.
And I would love it if the subcommittee came back with 3 goals of the program. How does the city benefit?
Yeah.
That sounds a little transactional. What I mean is, the community is better off because of this in these ways. Something like that.
Yeah. And the thing I would add to that is, if there's any educational materials that we create to support teachers, that we make them publicly available for the whole community,
Yeah.
because really nobody knows that we have a climate action plan and what to do about it. So anything we do for fourth graders or 12th graders or teachers is gonna help everyone in the community.
That's good.
Yeah, and that might be where we could, sorry, I shouldn't say this out loud, but as private citizens, that might be where we can play an active role, because we can come in on the climate action plan as much as anybody, right? If you want to do a YouTube channel, like, you can do that, right? But anyway, so I don't know.
Yeah,
Sorry,
but it would be
maybe-
also nice if it was on the city
Yeah,
website,
yeah.
you know?
That's the foundation.
Yeah.
I love coming up against that line. It's like, we should
I know
go
you
do
do,
it.
Jeff. That's why I
Just go do it. No, okay, well, does that feel, so as a subcommittee, we've got our next step, right? Is there anything else from the week? You should say, that was good. That really was what I personally had hoped, is we just get a good discussion.
And I think,
Ask and you shall receive.
I think what I learned is like, this is not gonna be an EQC led effort. This is a recommendation to the city to incorporate this sort of concept into their outreach.
If only because the EQC has a lot of things that we are committed to do over the coming year.
No, I don't think that's the reason. I think the reason is because it's not our job. It's not within the scope of what EQC is. And I
We've
painfully
lived that.
experienced
Yeah,
this
we've lived that.
myself. So, but there could be other entities that take this up and, you know, an educational nonprofit that wants to partner this and that and the other, you know, there's lots of other avenues, but it's not this.
I think,
What John described is what this entity does.
I think it takes a group like this to be a catalyst. And to John's point, I honestly totally fine being a catalyst and then getting the hell out of the way, right?
Right, because
So-
maybe we catalyze and then it gets taken up somewhere else. You never know. Butterfly effect.
As it properly should. If students are in classrooms, there's about 14 levels of what they should be
Yeah.
touching before they get to us.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay.
There's one admin piece. We just have to extend the term of this subcommittee.
Oh, right.
So that would be an action. And then as far as our action items, we'll go back to city clerk and discuss the proposal and the idea of,
And if you need to pull it, like, if it feels too PG and if it's a bit loud and you need to pull us into some of that, then at least do. I mean, it's one of those, doesn't have to be bifurcated if that helps.
definitely.
Okay. So we need to have a motion to extend to. What do you think?
Move that we extend the duration of the subcommittee to, I don't know, September, October? What do y'all think?
September feels tight.
October.
Should we say October?
I think we're later in this meeting, we're gonna move the heritage tree ordinance from September to October. And that leaves nothing in September as far as I can tell, unless I'm missing something. So maybe it would be a 1 month extension would be enough.
Yeah.
Because we have the time on the agenda, but I would want to check with staff, but I have the agenda's calendar correct.
The idea to move the Heritage Tree Ordinance to October was to give breathing room. The Heritage Tree Ordinance presentation discussion hopefully will happen in September, and then we'll be able to kind of wrap up a final recommendation in October. But still TBD on timing, and some key folks are out of office, so I wasn't able to get an update. So there is still something for September.
Okay.
But I'm okay with September. I just didn't want to push it. But if you guys feel okay with it, it's the three of us, right? So if you feel okay with September.
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
Probably a couple of coffees at Barone and I'm okay.
Hopefully at different
Have
times.
we all done that now? No. Okay, great. So then we need to make a motion to extend the.
The motion
Oh,
from
oh,
Commissioner Headley LaRocca and a second from.
Well, I was gonna ask, because I'm looking at the calendar, it says October as review and discuss student engagement ad hoc subcommittee recommendations. So
Maybe we don't need to do anything.
Oh,
am I looking at a current version of the calendar?
are you looking at the one in the agenda packet?
Yeah,
Okay, then yeah.
so
Then maybe
maybe
I'll
we just stick with that.
Oh, yeah, because we were originally. Okay, good. So are we closed with D3? But thank you. by the way. I feel like this is one of those things where we're pushing the envelope a little bit, we're stretching, and it was a good discussion, I think, so thanks for.
I think we tried to push the envelope and then it got closed.
No, I mean, if we pull any version of this off, I think
Yeah.
I mean, I agree, but I think it pushes the envelope to getting students engaged, so.
Definitely a very helpful discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, hopefully D4 will be fairly straightforward, which is to extend the duration of the Heritage Tree Ordinance Administrative Guidelines Ad hoc Subcommittee to October 2024. So Ms. Launder, could you provide a little additional background on this item?
Sure. So I just shared that we will have a draft of staff's recommended updates to the Heritage Tree Ordinance admin guidelines, hopefully by the September meeting. Probably wouldn't be prior. The meeting would probably be like an announcement and sharing of the guidelines, some discussion and questions, and then moving into October when we could have the EQC make a formal recommendation on what you'd like to see in the admin guidelines. To that end, in the work plan, the subcommittee is supposed to wrap up in September, so just wanted to do this admin exercise to extend the subcommittee. Is there anyone from the subcommittee who wants to add any flavor to what I just shared?
I have a question.
Sure.
About the process. So I understand that the proposed admin guidelines are released by staff. And then that begins a 30-day public comment period. So I guess I'm hoping that the EQC will be able to discuss the admin guidelines before the comment period ends.
Yes.
Or maybe the public comment period happens. I guess our comments, public comments?
Yes.
Okay, so it will happen in that window
Yes.
before that window closes, and you can consider those along with any other public comments as you finalize your plans.
And I will check in with the team to see if 30-day is a hard admin window, if we can do like 35, just in case there's,
Yeah.
And sorry, this is,
Probably fewer than 30 where the problems arise, I bet.
this is technically a clarifying question, but so we are EQC members, but we're allowed to amplify anything you communicate. So there are groups that we probably want to make aware that the administrative guidelines, so long as we don't generate the comms, but we can amplify it to, everybody and their pet dog to please participate.
yeah, absolutely.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, and come to the EQC meeting, add their own
Yeah,
public
yeah.
comments for sure.
Yeah, you could generate your own comms relative to that.
yeah, okay.
Do we have to open to public comment? There's no more clarifying questions.
Any public comment on this item?
Let's see, I have public comment cards here. If anyone would like to make a comment in the room, if you're on Zoom, you can hit the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen or press *9 if you're calling in. No one in the room, and it doesn't look like anyone online has a raised hand. I'll return the meeting to you.
All right, so open for EQC discussion on where we're headed with the ordinance
Or motion.
or motion, sorry, yeah. So the motion would be to just extend from September to October.
So move to extend.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion from Vice Chair McKenna and a second from Commissioner Headley LaRocca to extend the duration of the Heritage Tree Ordinance Administrative Guidelines Ad hoc Subcommittee to October 2024. All in favor? Okay, 6 approved, 1 absent, so moved.
All right, fantastic. So we are on a roll. So item E on the agenda, reports and announcements. So we can now hear reports and announcements from staff and commissioners. And if it's okay, we'll start with staff.
Sure. I started with. The first one I wanted to share as it relates to like one of the items today is the Youth Climate Ambassador Program. Is run by the County Office of Ed, Peninsula Clean Energy, and the County Sustainability Department. Each year they take a cohort of students and have several education workshop sessions, and then they do projects at their school or in their neighborhoods and get funding to do that. The applications are now open for this calendar year, and they close the first week of September, I believe. So we'll share that in the minutes, but any high school age students who are interested in climate action, or leadership skills are encouraged to apply. I think they can accommodate about 60 to 100 across the county every year. So it's great to let's get our students into that program. So that was the first one. The second one I wanted to share was around a tool that the chair has shared with me around Washington Post climate chatbot. It's an interesting AI tool that you can use to query the Washington Post articles on climate. So you can ask you, what is a heat pump? And it'll show all of their news articles as well as a summary of what a heat pump is. And so we'll include that in the minutes, but thought we could share it out and during these announcements as an interesting tool to communicate about climate. And the next one I wanted to share was around city council agendas. A short-term outlook on August 27th, next week, the regular city council meeting. There will be climate on the agenda. We'll be bringing the scope of work for 2025 to 2030 that the EQC spent much of fiscal year 2023, 2024 updating. We'll certainly send the agenda to you all. We're going to be focusing the conversation on policy direction around CAP 1, which is electrifying our buildings. And so we'll be talking about building code amendments. And that would be a great time to share your feedback on how you'd like to see our code shape up. And we also are the chair and vice chair can speak as members of the EQC and share what the EQC recommended. And you're all welcome to communicate as members of the public. And you don't have to say that as you make public comment. And yeah, I would just encourage folks to review the staff report ahead of time and come to the meeting, whether virtually or in person, because it was a tremendous lift from this commission. And I'm really proud that we were able to steer it through city departments and put together something that's really remarkable to share with city council. So thank you all, and it'll be, I think, a good day at council. And then the environmental justice element is going to the planning commission on the 26th, so the night before. And that might also be an interesting meeting to attend. And then one final update from me, the chair had shared many months ago an opportunity through the Environmental Protection Agency to apply for a community change grant. It's a very exciting opportunity. The minimum reward or award is $10 million to be able to kind of transform how we look at climate adaptation, transportation, climate mitigation, electrification. And so we've been working with the county as kind of our anchor organization on that, and they've been convening cities and other partners to discuss what a regional application could look like. And the chair and I will be meeting with the county in 2 weeks to further flesh out some ideas and amplify the EQC's recommendations around adaptation. Hopefully get some funding from Menlo Park through that. So.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing that.
Huge shout out to Rachel because she pulled the county into the mix, and we've got other partners like SVLG and McKinnon, other folks who will partner with us, hopefully, but.
Seems like Spur could be a great partner too.
Yeah.
Potentially. So, yeah, so the good news is by having the county, it pulls in other jurisdictions and so, yeah, the team's laid a lot of foundation for that. So
Yeah.
I think we have a good shot.
Yeah, and I wasn't sure if this commission had heard about, so
We can always come back
Yeah,
and
come back.
I think, maybe we could potentially add it to the agenda once we get a little further along, because it does align with CAP 6.
yes.
Which is why we had started to move CAP 6 away from just sea level rise and more toward something like this.
Yeah, that's it for me.
Okay, so on the CAP 5 front of things, we're meeting tomorrow at 9 actually, with the solar installers for the PECE GovBV program. And we'll be coordinating with them and the re-roofing contractor. So just again, we were able to include 4 facilities and promise to replace the roofs before we install the solar. So the Public Works team has been doing a lot of work to get those projects ready, and both the re-roofing contractors and the solar installers are excited to coordinate so that they can share information. And so we're facilitating that conversation. And then there'll be more work to kind of refine the designs and move forward. So that's exciting. There's going to be the final report or update on the Tesla pilot is actually going on as an informational item to the city council on the 27th of August. So the same it'll be in the same agenda packet. So if you're feeling like you want more information on our implementation efforts, you can read that report as well. We have some other work on EV charging that's ongoing. And then I think kind of a newer item that's exciting is that the county is also coordinating an effort for education and outreach on electrification with an ad agency called Good Stuff Partners. And so we'll be joining conversations to talk about scoping and then how and what our needs have been and where we've seen opportunities for those campaigns. And they had some examples at the last RICAPS, which is regional.
Integrated Climate Action Planning Suite.
Regional Integrated Climate Action Planning Suite, which is a group of different cities within San Mateo County and Recon Consultants. So that's exciting, and we'll be meeting with them in early September. Oh, yes, thank you. We were awarded the PCE Gov BE or Building Electrification Grant for the Belhaven Child Development Center, which is one of the facilities that again is going to receive solar through the Gov PV program. And so the scope of that project is to replace the gas furnaces with electric alternatives.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
Very cool. What's the timeline for that?
So we're supposed to begin and I think complete construction within the year, and we're working on scoping that with our Parks and Public Works.
So by the end of this year, that building will be electric?
So yeah, we need to kind of to figure that out. There's we have a lot of projects on the CIP docket, but not by the end of this year. I think it's within they want us to start within a calendar year of the award, which was last month. So
It's exciting.
Yeah.
And providing cooling too, which I imagine wasn't present before.
Yes, yeah, and we're trying to look holistically at the project to also think about things like fresh air exchange and.
How are those successes being advertised or publicized? I mean, you're doing a lot of very good job, but
Yes.
it goes into the website and it's a bit.
Goes into the top secret website.
Right.
So that's I think that's something that we had talked about within the implementation scope of work for CAP 5 was dashboard or some other kind of way to better publicize the work and really visualize there are many items. And so if you check out the staff report for August 27th, you might see something about that.
Oh. It's funny with regard to the top secret website, when you described a dashboard, I suddenly remembered when I was a kid, there was a local tennis tournament and there'd be a big sign with all the draws and who had played. And I just realized there's absolutely nothing stopping city staff from putting up a great, simple hand-drawn little update of the thermometer or of the pie chart. And the reason I describe it as homespun is because nobody would want to think you spent money doing it, but it would just be like, look at the grit and initiative that somebody in sustainability did. They just put out a little sign to say, hey, nothing's stopping them.
So why don't we go around the table for updates from commissioners? I have a small handful, but I will go last. That is the province of the chair. So, and the updates from commissioners.
I'll just mention there's a statewide program called Equitable Building Decarbonization, EBD. It's a state-funded program that's really similar to what Peninsula Clean Energy is doing regionally. It's an opportunity for low-income residents of the state to electrify their homes. And so there's about $567 million available across the state. They just awarded the administrators for each region. The Northern California administrator will be AEA, which is Association for Energy Affordability. So that program is moving forward, and I think the full launch will be the fall of next year. But that'll be a really exciting opportunity for low-income folks across the state to electrify their homes. It'll cover all sorts of work. There's a requirement that at least 2 of the 4 items in your home be electrified to participate in the program, meaning a water heater and a furnace. But you can also do your cooking, your clothes dryer. You can do some other sort of building improvements as well with that money. So that's a really exciting opportunity for the state and even Northern California. I don't know if you mentioned the PCE's program, which is going to be administered, the Bellhaven grant money is going towards them to administer that electrification program. They're going to do a soft launch in August and a full launch of that program in November. So to the point earlier, we really need to spread the word and get that money spent within the time frame that we have to spend it.
Is the Association for Energy Affordability, I know them to work in multifamily, so is that a part of this program, doing multifamily and rentals?
That's a good question. I know it's single family, but I don't know if it's multifamily as well.
And when the PCE program officially soft launches, we were told August 19th. And I haven't seen it yet, but when it officially does, we'll send an email to the group because the link will be live on their website to start scheduling appointments. And Liz and I have a game plan for calling folks, sending them letters, emailing them and letting them know that the link is live and that PC is doing their own outreach to the wait list, but we're gonna be bolstering that. We're just refreshing our inboxes, waiting for PCE to let us know it's gone live. So thank you for elevating that.
That's all.
Please.
Early in my tenure in this commission, the conversation was very interesting around the idea of this commission being able to collaborate with the other commissions. And it has recently come to my attention that joint meetings between commissions used to be standard practice. And joint meetings would mean that during this meeting here, staff would have the agenda that would normally happen, and the other staff would come, and the meetings would just happen simultaneously, longer, obviously. But it would allow for the one commission to be an audience to the deliberations of the other. And I would say up first, complete streets. But in any event, it is something that we could push forward on. There's precedent. Without extending staff.
And I'll just add on, just to sit in like the Housing Commission and all the other things, it's very similar to what we do. I mean, it's not unfamiliar territory. They review their work plan. I got a good insight into that. So, even the drop-in thing works, but it's good to know that we can
have joint meetings.
Cool. All right, fantastic. Well, I will go last. I've got 4 things, but they're all going to be super quick. So CAL FIRE. Quick update is we have been working on the urban forest management plan. We thought, you just reminded me, so this one I'm adding ad hoc. We thought we would hear back by now. The request for the city plus a couple of other entities was about $4.6 million total. As those who were involved, we started from not much to making a really big ask. Our partners at Canopy are watching it a lot. We're watching it as the city, to see. We talked to the point of contact arborist for Northern California, Tanner, and it'll probably be toward the end of this month that we know what we're going to get, if anything. The hope is we get at least one. There's one workforce development one where Job Train led, there's a planting one that Canopy led, and then the actual urban forest management plan the city led, and Rachel and team took the ball. So the 4.6, we'll hopefully get at least one of those 3, which is going to be about 1 point something million, mostly going into Bellhaven. So I'm assuming there'll be a lot of champagne corks popping and stuff if we get any of those, and I'll let everybody know. The second one is, thank you for those who talked to Catherine Beiser for the school bond, and John brought this up earlier. I will say that that is going to have a really hard push as it gets toward ballot, and then November 5th. So Catherine and I are going to have a Cafe Brewing Coffee in a day or two. I think I'll be helping with some of the field lead and activity to go out and knock on doors. So if there are people who are interested, I think a lot of us are gonna hopefully be able to help get that across the line. But it's mostly about electrification in schools, and it builds on some of the work that John and I do as advisors to Menlo Park City School District around their climate action stuff. So this is kind of phase one of a broader engagement with schools. The third thing I wanted to mention, there's a few of us who have been having discussions about the CPUC. And so long story short, they've made some decisions that haven't really been good for things like solar. And so there's currently a bill still in play, 1734, Senate Bill 1734. Sorry, 1374, it's been a long day. So Josh Becker is pushing that, our climate champion on the Senate. The very good news with that is that in assembly and then assembly suspension, which is what the legislature does to kind of rationalize things relative to the budget, it was a bit of a bloodbath this year, and a lot of bills kind of died on that hill in suspension. But 1374 made it out, and what that means is it's going back to assembly, then it goes to Senate, and then it goes to Governor Newsom. What 1374 does is essentially says that when a school has panels and generates solar, today what they have to do is, if they have multiple places where they generate that, they have to sell it back to the utility at a low rate, and then they have to buy it back from the utility to use it. They can't use their own solar that they generate. So I'm not going to bore you with a lot of details, but a couple things are happening. One is I've been pitching in and helping Josh. We've emailed every single superintendent across the state of California in public schools, all the COE, county offices of education. We're going to push really hard to make a lot of noise so that the governor knows that a lot of people are paying attention on the education side. There's a very large coalition on the climate side as well, a lot of 350 chapters. So the reason I bring this up is it's one of the few climate bills that has survived this final push. We are very, very close. If you would be interested in doing this, I'm just making you aware, but if you would be interested, on the governor's staff, there's a guy named Grant Mack. grant.mac@gov.ca.gov. A lot of us are, well, we're going to encourage every superintendent to email Grant and the governor's chief of staff, because more than 20 calls, kind of people go, what the hell is going on? So I wanted to, because we're all kind of climate warriors in our private lives, I just wanted everybody to know that there is a really important school plus climate bill that is really close. And the governor hasn't always been, he's been problematic on some climate stuff. Let me just say it that way. So that leave it for what you want to do with that. But I wanted to make you aware that a lot of people are pitching in and trying to push that one. So we have one big victory. So that was the third one. The fourth one is just a quick update. So the elephant in the room is the post-Jeff comment. So thank you, everybody in this room. But most of you know, I've had a part-time job since about March, which was running for city council, and found out last week that nobody's running against me. So,
So I like your chances.
yeah, I think please check the one box on the ballot that's going to have my name. So I will be leaving this group at some point soon and be joining the city council in
That's
January.
November, right?
Well, it's on the ballot in November, but because I'm running unopposed, it's already kind of a done deal.
So you start in January.
I started January, sorry, yes, of course. And then we skip a couple of meetings, so.
We'll just skip one, just November.
Oh, okay, good. So 2 or 3 more meetings with me as the chair, and then there will be an opening on the EQC. So we have some folks potentially who might be interested in joining the EQC. I definitely, we should definitely talk about that and encouraging more folks to join. But one is I wanted to say thank you because everybody in this team endorsed me, and I really appreciate that. And I am super nervous, but super excited and really learning a lot throughout this whole process. So, and then the other thing I'll say is you'll have a you'll have a climate champion, a big climate champion on the council. So anyway, that's why I wanted to kind of go last, is just to let everybody know officially. So thanks.
Congratulations, they are getting a great addition to the council.
Thanks.
And on that front, what can we do to encourage District 1 representation in this commission?
We could agendize that.
Can we,
Future
can we
meeting.
try to do anything we can on that front?
Yeah, it's a great.
Yeah, maybe appropriate to have that conversation at the community campus, which is not quite yet open for room reservations. I'll be opening it in the fall.
And from my informational question here, so can we meet closer to District 1, at least on a semi-regular basis?
Once the Bellhaven Community Campus is open for room reservations, we can meet there as well. The city clerk's still developing a policy because it's gonna take their staff's time at the Bellhaven Community Campus to set up the space for us. The clerk may have to join us over there, so they're figuring that piece out, but it should be, I mean,
Yeah, I mean, traveling to Bellhaven is a pain, but I think it would be worth it.
I would say budget, the one time we do it, I was going to, the CCCT meeting is usually the night after this, and I was gonna go to the last one. And traffic was blocked, something was happening, but it was an hour and a half. Something was wrong, of course, but like it can get super heavy.
It's not right that our little city is basically split in half.
It is split in half, and crossing on this is a whole discussion, right? But crossing on the bicycle bridge, it's a pain also. I mean, there is no easy way to go.
well, we'll agendize that for future meeting and send any updates when Bellhaven campus is open.
But I would love to put that on the table and see what we can do.
And I would say, just to add one thing to make that more critical, I did a little analysis when Zach and Suzanne joined that. I forget how many candidates we had, but we had a bunch of openings. It was not the last round, but the round before.
Yeah.
There was not I want to say there was 40 people. There was not a single District 1 person who put their.
Yeah, I did the same analysis.
So there was zero. And this last round, what they just did, it was last week.
District 1 on the FAC.
Do you? Oh. Well, I'm just saying, nobody signed up this little big round when you.
We can get in the discussion when.
Yeah.
Did you have one more?
Yeah.
No?
Just to answer your question, the Equitable Building Decarbonization Program is open to single family, multifamily, and mobile and manufactured homes.
Good.
And can you share the details about what's covered on that one? I mean, what does electrification mean?
It's everything, but you have to do at least two things: heat pump, water heater, and furnace.
Do you want to send us the info for the minutes?
Sure.
Does it cover residential batteries? Because there are.
Alternative battery.
Yeah, I would love to learn more about that. Because people can save money.
Yeah, I feel like that's really important.
And it's targeted low income. Yes.
So it covers, if you want me to do it real quick, heating and cooling, building envelope, water heating, cooking, laundry, air quality, lighting, electrical, and remediation. So it doesn't cover solar or storage.
Yeah, but let's talk about that one, because you are in the CAC and the season. Because the new portable batteries are very cheap and they save money.
Does that conclude our announcements?
Yeah, so why don't we, if everybody's okay, then thank you very much. Let's adjourn.
Thank you, everyone, and we'll just stop recording here.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, there's a handful of that.